I call the November 12th, 2024 City Council regular meeting to order. City Clerk Ben Lane, please conduct the roll call.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor David Ortega.
Present.
Vice Mayor Barry Graham.
Here.
Council members Tammy Caputi.
Here.
Tom Durham.
Here.
Betty Janik.
Here.
Kathy Littlefield.
Here.
And Solange Whitehead.
Here.
City Manager Jim Thompson.
Here.
City Attorney Sherry Scott.
Here.
City Treasurer Sonia Andrews.
Here.
Acting City Auditor Leigh Clough.
Here.
And the clerk is present. Thank you, Mayor.
Excellent. We have Scottsdale Police Sergeant Sean Ryan, as well as Detective Dustin Patrick, and firefighter Ivan Biliver. If anybody needs assistance, let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilwoman Whitehead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we draw attention to the ongoing wars in foreign countries as they fight to protect their democracy and freedom. Also, we celebrated Veterans Day yesterday, and we keep our military service members, both at home and abroad, those deployed, in our thoughts and reflections at this time. I ask you to join with me in a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. I call on City Manager Jim Thompson. Give us your manager's report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This evening we have a short video for you.
I'm Public Information Officer Kelsey Perry with 5 things happening around the city you need to know. At number 5, it's a look at the city's Landlord Engagement Initiative. Scottsdale's Housing and Community Assistance Office provides landlords assistance through the Housing Partner Program, which offers direct deposit options, prompt customer service, signing bonuses, and damage relief claims when applicable. Last fiscal year, the program added 75 units and 15 new landlord partners who appreciate the stability of qualified renters who are vetted and managed through the city's Community Assistance Office. If you own a rental property in Scottsdale, learn how the Housing Partner Program could work for you. Just visit scottsdaleaz.gov and search Housing and Community Assistance. At number 4, we put the spotlight on Scottsdale tourism. As the weather cools and Scottsdale prepares to welcome an influx of visitors, let's look at how out-of-town spending contributed to the city's economy last year. Scottsdale visitors generated an annual economic impact of $3.5 billion in 2023. That's an increase from the $3.2 billion generated in 2022. An estimated 11.2 million visitors came to Scottsdale last year, from day trippers to domestic and international overnight visitors. That's nearly 500,000 more than in 2022. Learn more about the city's Tourism and Events Department by visiting scottsdaleaz.gov and searching tourism. At number 3, we salute our nation's veterans. Scottsdale is paying tribute to veterans and active military members throughout November in recognition of National Veterans and Military Families Month. The city held a Veterans Day commemoration and community hike this week in honor of Veterans Day. And for the 3rd straight year, Scottsdale is honoring its local heroes through a banner display program in Old Town Scottsdale. More than 40 local veterans and service members are being recognized with banners along Drinkwater Boulevard between Osborne and Scottsdale Roads. The banners will be up through November 15th. For more information on the banner program, visit scottsdaleaz.gov and search Scottsdale Salutes. At number 2, it's an invitation to a winter wonderland, right here in the desert. The holiday lights at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park. Enjoy a captivating train ride through enchanting light displays, carousel rides, miniature golf, and more. The event kicks off November 29th and runs through December 30th. Purchase tickets at therailroadpark.com. And at number 1, it's more holiday magic during Scottsdale's month-long celebration, Scottsdazzle. The fun starts November 30th with a sing-along and tree lighting ceremony on the Scottsdale waterfront and continues through December 31st with more than 45 events, seasonal decor and light displays, dining, shopping, and more throughout Old Town Scottsdale. Visit scottsdazzle.com to see all the fun we have in store this year. That will do it for November. For more news and events, sign up for our city newsletters by heading to scottsdaleaz.gov and searching newsletter.
Well, thank you. Excellent. We are launching into our peak season. Next, we will have a presentation. It's a certificate of appreciation from the United States Vietnam commemoration. We have Justin Lehman, who's the Vice Chair of the Veterans Advisory Commission, to make the presentation with Kelly Corsett. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ortega, members of the City Council. I am Kelly Corsett, Communications and Public Affairs Director, and I'm also staff liaison to the city's Veterans Advisory Commission. And the commission is represented here by Chair Land Anderson and also by Vice Chair Justin Lehman. On July 5, 2016, the Scottsdale City Council adopted a resolution approving the city's participation as a commemorative partner in the United States Vietnam War commemoration, a nationwide effort to properly honor the generation of brave and dedicated veterans who served on active duty between November 1, 1955 and May 15, 1975. Since adopting that resolution, the city has hosted a number of ceremonies dedicated to this purpose. The past 2 years, with direction and support from the Veterans Advisory Commission, the city has hosted special events on March 29, National Vietnam Veterans Day, specifically to thank our Vietnam veterans. These events have been embraced and appreciated, attended by hundreds of thankful veterans, their families, and supporters. The city is being recognized by the U.S. Vietnam War commemoration as a top performer among its partners, and members of the VAC are here to thank the mayor and city council for your continuing support of the veteran community and present you with this certificate of appreciation, which reads, in part, "On behalf of a grateful nation, congratulations on your superb efforts as a commemorative partner with the U.S. Vietnam War commemoration. Your impressive dedication, energy, and engagement has identified you as a top performer, a significant partner instrumental in thanking and honoring the more than 4 million of our nation's Vietnam veterans and their families. We are indebted to you and your volunteers for the countless hours spent coordinating events and activities that recognize the service and sacrifice of this generation of veterans and families. These accomplishments have left a profound and lasting impact on our lives and communities. Thank you again for your excellent contribution to this noble mission." Signed, Edward J. Crystal, Jr., Major General, United States Army, Director. So, Mayor, if we can present the certificate to you. And Mayor, if I may, in closing, I'd just like to make sure that all of our Vietnam veterans know that we say thank you and welcome home. And finally, please mark your calendars for Saturday, March 29, 2025, which is National Vietnam Veterans Day. We are planning a special ceremony to thank our Vietnam veterans in recognition of the 50th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War. We hope to see you then. Thank you.
Excellent. And again, we had a marvelous Veterans Day commemoration at the lawn just outside City Hall. That was yesterday. And for our Veterans Day, veterans of all wars. During tonight's meeting, the council may make a motion to recess into executive session to obtain legal advice on any applicable item on the agenda. If authorized by the council, the executive session will be held immediately and will not be open to the public. The public meeting would then resume following the executive session. Also, per our council rules of procedure, citizens attending city council meetings shall observe the same rules of order and decorum applicable to members of the council and city staff. Unauthorized remarks or demonstrations just delay the meeting and might cause a removal from the meeting by security staff. Additionally, the council recently updated our council members will not be using any ex parte communications. We only are using devices which are relevant to our council meetings. All other electronic devices must be stored elsewhere during the council meetings. Next, we will go to agenda items, and first one is public comment. Public comment is reserved for Scottsdale residents, business owners, and/or property owners to comment on non-agendized items that are within the council's jurisdiction. No advocacy for or against a candidate is permitted by state law, and then we would just listen to the public comment and take no action. As you know, you have the opportunity to check in with our clerk. We have one person requesting this session, and he's also submitting a petition. Please come forward, Stephen Allen Sutton. It's best to use the podium.
Can you go to the microphone?
We can't hear you. It'll be recorded best this way. And we did receive the petition, so.
Before I give my public comment, I request that the council, in accordance with paragraph 4.1 of the 2024 Rules of Council Procedure, take a vote to temporarily suspend the 3-minute public comment rule to allow me, as a representative of 500 Scottsdale residents, to speak for 6 minutes.
Sir, we appreciate you. You will have another opportunity when you present your petition later. So you will get 6 minutes. You can have 3 now and 3 as we receive. And I certainly will give you courtesy for that portion of.
All right, thank you. I was not
Mayor,
Is that?
I apologize for interrupting. The public comment for the citizen petition, the petitioner has to speak during public comment. When it comes up later in the agenda, that's just for you and the council.
Okay. So again, our rules would just permit that please speak as public, as a member of the public. You have 3 minutes.
That was my understanding. That's why I requested.
Okay. Well, thank you. And we have the petition. So
You will not consider
please
a
go.
vote?
Please proceed.
I will proceed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Sutton, 6637 North 81st Street. Members of the council, you should each have the following documents before you. A 7-page cover letter that is my research report with supporting references, a Parks and Recreation Department email, 4 dog park signs created by dog park users, 2 petitions each with 500-plus Scottsdale resident signatures. Tonight I am representing the 500-plus Scottsdale resident users of Chaparral Dog Park that are petitioning you. We request you direct the Parks and Recreation Department to remove the currently used problematic large dog area and small dog area signs. We request installation of the active dog area and passive dog area signs we designed that are similar to what was used for 16 years from 2007 to 2023. We also request the installation of the dog park etiquette signs we created to facilitate better user self-regulation of the dog park. It should never have been necessary to contact the mayor and city council about a problem that could be so easily solved, inexpensively and quickly solved by the Parks and Recreation Department and Commission. Cooperation sought from Parks and Recreation has been denied, as evidenced by their lack of replies to requests for cooperation, initial dismissal of the need to take action, and after acknowledging the need for action due to public pressure, an announcement of a several months-long delay to research and place the issue on a meeting agenda. Furthermore, there is an email specifically stating a non-commitment to consider input from the public on this issue. The delay appears to be nothing more than deliberate bureaucratic slow walking of what could be a quick and easy process. The Parks and Recreation Department's email also provided names of the specific agencies: National Recreation Parks Association, American Kennel Club, Scottsdale Police Department, Risk Management, City Attorney they would contact for their research project. I conducted a parallel research project by contacting the same agencies. It should not take the Parks and Recreation Department months to conduct and conclude their research. It should take less than a week. My research into city documents and contact with the agency cited above indicates that the Parks and Recreation Department's decision to change the signage at Chaparral Dog Park during the summer of 2023 was arbitrarily decided by a single individual, almost completely undocumented, and not justified by precedent, authoritative references, user input, or conditions existing at Chaparral Dog Park. This problem occurred during this council's administration, and I hope this council will not leave this problem to be solved by the next administration. I'd also like to add that every person that signed this petition did it in person. And they never signed it without fully understanding what they were signing, because there was a presentation given to fully ensure they knew exactly what was happening, including where these signs would be placed and how large they would be. This has overwhelming support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. With that, we will close public comment. Duly noted, we have the petition in hand, and it will come forth. I wish you'd gotten the dogs' names, too. That would have been really great, because
Beg your pardon, sir?
I said I wish they had the dogs' names, too, with it, because we have a lot of
Well, I think if you look closely at some of those petition pages, you'll see some smudges. Those are actually dog prints from the mud at the dog.
Exactly. Thank you, sir. Okay, we have closed public comment. Next, we have the minutes and the approval of the minutes. I request a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of October 8th, 2024. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Please record your vote. Unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have our consent agenda items 1 through 11. And as you know, there's full file information on every consent agenda item. However, if any council member has a question, they can make that point or request more information. Also, we will open public comment on any items 1 through 11. Councilmember Durham.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't want to remove item number 4, but there has been some misinformation circulated about this item. So I wanted to give Mr. Berry an opportunity, if he could, to discuss this.
Well, you can make your comment, and then I don't see any other requests regarding any consent agenda item.
Okay.
So if you have a remark regarding that, then
Yes,
we'll move on to a motion.
What I would like to say is that yesterday afternoon, many of us on the council got numerous emails that said there were 4,000 pending apartments before the council. And I'm pretty sure that email included erroneous information about the area project, which is number 4 on the consent agenda. I received a number of emails that said this project contained 1,000 units, and it's my understanding this was circulated by someone who had no knowledge of what the project involved. And so is my understanding it includes only 100 single-family townhomes. And so before we vote, to clarify the record on this item 4, I just wanted to offer Mr. Berry a chance to correct the record on this.
Thank you. We also have a request from Vice Mayor Graham to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't interested in item number 4, correcting the record or anything like that. I wanted to pull item number, please give me a moment, 9 from the consent agenda. And then I think I wanted to ask a quick question about item number 6, if I may. Oh, I see Councilmember Janik.
Just to clarify one, item number 9 has to do with the contract between the cities of Phoenix and Scottsdale. And just to clarify that, if anyone was not aware of it. And then your point on number 6, please.
Number 6 is the Water Campus Administration Building Design. And do you just want to hear a presentation, Betty? Is that, I see head nods from
Yeah.
Councilmember Janik.
Yes, because every time I see the Second Amendment to the contract, which is in line 2 of our sheet, I worry that the price has gone up quite a
Right,
bit.
exactly.
And that is a concern, so it's our job to monitor that. So yes, I would like a presentation on it. Thank you.
I would agree.
So we have our city engineer, Ms. Timquist, to proceed with that presentation as requested, item number 6.
Okay, thank you. Allison Timque, City Engineer. This is the amendment to the contract for Scottsdale Water Campus Laboratory Expansion and Administrative Building Renovation Project. So what we have before you is contract amendment number 2023-004 COS-A2 with Wilming Construction Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $7,201,733.96 to provide construction services for Phase 0 and early material procurement services for Phase 1 of the Scottsdale Water Campus Laboratory Expansion and Administration Building. Okay, this it's kind of hard to see up here, but what we're trying to show here is, this is a little bit better. If you can see the area in blue, which kind of shows the visitor and the employee parking area, and it's labeled Phase 0, that's the current phase. So I know it sounds like we're making an amendment to the contract or to the contract price, but as you recall, this is a design, build, management contract, similar to our construction manager at risk contracts where we've done a qualification based selection for the contractor, and then we negotiate the GMPs. So in this scenario, it's a design, build, manager, so we have a contractor and a designer working in tandem. So we first hired them for the first contract for their pre-construction services. And then next, the second contract, the first amendment to the contract, was for their actual design services. And now this is the first phase of construction. So we're not adding any money to the project. The project budget has not increased. It's just simply the amendment to the contract to award the next phase that they're doing. And in this case, it's the first phase of construction.
Thank you.
Allison, thank you for your presentation. Mayor, may I?
Oh, yeah, no, is your mic on?
Okay, thank you. Sure. Mayor, how can we get the presentations maybe a little, is there any way we can get a little more clear so that that's clear as far as these aren't budget overruns, this isn't, because there's always those questions that always arise, and I agree with Councilmember Janik about, trying to keep track of it all. Thank you.
Councilmember Graham, so are you looking for additional information, maybe in the council action report that describes that? I believe that we listed that there was the initial contract, which was the pre-construction services, and then there was the First Amendment, which was for the full-blown design, and then this is for construction services, but maybe we can expound on that a little bit more.
Maybe
would that be helpful?
We can retool that because, in the executive the summary, the very first page of the packet, these are public documents, and they got to be accessible to, people that don't have as much expertise and knowledge of this to understand it. So it was confusing to me, so I thought it would be confusing to others. And thanks for walking us through it.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor.
Well, thank you very much. And again, the digital copy has all the details and line items that are needed. Councilwoman Janik.
Thank you, Mayor. On item number 4, I would really like to hear from Greg Bloomberg on a description of the Silverstone rezoning, as well as Attorney Barry, if in fact it is needed after we hear from our staff.
Okay, so you're not necessarily asking for a complete presentation, just clarification from the representative?
Yes,
The
thank you.
applicant's representative.
Yeah.
So go ahead, yes.
Thank you, Mayor Ortega and Councilwoman Janik. The applicant will also be able to elaborate on this a little bit, but what this request is a rezoning of a parcel from C1 to R5. It's part of the Silverstone Master Plan, and the request is to do 100 fee title lots with townhomes on them. These would not be apartments. With that, there has to be a little bit of a change to the Silverstone land use budget, because previously this site was exclusively required to be CO. So we have to change that land use budget to allow the R5 to occur on this site. So that's the other part of that change.
Thank you.
Okay, so the overall inventory is switched from C1 to R5 and impacts 100 units as per the report, and that should clarify everything. Okay? At this point, we also have a question. Did you have a question on item number 4, Councilwoman Littlefield? No. Okay, thank you. Did you have a question on consent agenda items?
On item number 8.
Please turn your mic on.
Item number 8, Montero Food and Alcohol License. I was just curious as to why that is being terminated. We've had that company for a long time, and I just was curious.
Mayor Ortega, members of City Council, I am Nick Molinari, the Assistant Executive Director for Community Services. I do have a presentation that I can run through relatively quickly if you'd like me to go through that.
Yes, thank you.
Great. So this is an aerial of the Westworld site plan with the 101 to your left, north to the top of the screen, to the right of the screen, east, and then to the bottom south. The facility that is circled in red is the Montero facility. That facility has been was built in the late 1980s. This is a picture of the Montero facility, a relatively recent picture of the Montero facility. So to provide some background on the history of Montero, the city of Scottsdale entered into a land lease agreement with the Bureau of Reclamation in 1982, which is a 75-year lease with a 50-year initial term and then a 25-year extension. And that agreement was to create recreational and entertainment activity in that northern region of Scottsdale, which was very north at that point. Until 1997, the facility known as Westworld was not owned by the city of Scottsdale. So it was privately managed by an operator that had the exclusive food and beverage rights to the entire facility. And in 1997, when the city purchased the management rights to the Westworld property, much of which had been built with private funds and had been built privately for $4.5 million, we elected not to purchase the food and beverage rights, the management rights to the Montero facility at that point for $2 million. To clarify, that the city has never held the management rights for Montero, and they've been exchanged from several private organizations over the course of time. Here's a quick background. I won't go into this, but from 87 to 92, Horse World joint venture built the amenities at Westworld that included Diamondback Steakhouse and Saloon, which is now Montero. In 1997, the city purchased Westworld and elected not to purchase those management rights. When the city did purchase Westworld, we entered into a concessionaire agreement with an organization called Pegasus. And Pegasus at that time entered into a sub-concession agreement with Big Four Catering to provide food and beverage services throughout the Westworld facility in Montera. And then in 2002, the food and beverage master license for Montera was transferred from Pegasus to National Western Capital Corporation, and it has been in their possession since 2002. This is a picture of Diamondback Steakhouse. So what are the benefits? Why are we here today to ask for termination of the agreement? One is for the benefit to the city of Scottsdale is strategic control of the Westworld facility. So Westworld, as it was managed in the 90s and early 2000s, was not a year-round event facility. There weren't events, city events that were occurring at Westworld really daily. And the idea, the concept of a second management company operating Montera did not provide any real impact to city events or our ability to bring in new events. So really control of the Westworld property, our ability to book events, our ability to control the sites, that includes the Westworld master plan, which we are currently working on. And the focus of that master plan is circulation, access, parking is a big piece of that. And the Montera facility has a relatively large parking footprint, about 250 spaces, which are obligated to the Montera facility when it's used. There are financial considerations to our recommendation to cancel their contract. And then the moving management rights to the city of Scottsdale does provide some increased space and some diversified space for the Westworld portfolio. So strategic control and alignment with our Westworld master plan, there's a couple of primary risks to not canceling the management rights. One is the possibility of National Western Capital Corporation assigning the rights to another vendor. And that did prompt this decision to move forward. The discussion about the city exercising its $2 million option to buy out the food and beverage rights for Montera has been something that's been discussed for years. And it was discussed at the point that the city of Scottsdale acquired the Westworld property in the late 90s. At that point, food and beverage wasn't quite what it is now. So the city, and that, I'll highlight this a couple of times, but that $2 million investment in 1997 is a lot different than what that $2 million investment is today. And that's stayed the same since 97, so there isn't a CPI escalator. There has been no escalation in that cancellation. So the National Western Capital Corporation did come to the city of Scottsdale with a desire to sublease the Montera facility, which provided logistically a number of concerns with a potential venue that was hoping to activate that space 365 days a year in the middle of Westworld events. The Westworld Master Plan, which I had mentioned before, that is primarily focused on parking, access, ingress, egress. Having control of the Montera property is an essential function with us being able to plan the site. Oh, let me go previous. So there are some financial considerations for increased revenue. Right now, the city of Scottsdale receives 2% for any of the activity that occurs at the Montera facility. So the current projections for fiscal year 24-25 are anticipated about $205,000, which is about $4,000 to the city. If we were to cancel the management rights and the city were to have that, that same activity would multiply by 10 for the city of Scottsdale in terms of the percentage that the city of Scottsdale would receive. That's based on our lowest commission percentage, which is 19% through our food and beverage provider. A conservative activity projection would be 35 events per year. Right now we have 16. We think 35 events is pretty conservative for us relative to the demand at Westworld. The piece that we would see immediately is we would implement a rental fee, which we do not receive right now. So we'd come back to the council during the rates and fees process and we'd recommend a rental fee for the Montera facility. We're using our projections here at $2,500. That's pretty conservative, that's pretty light. The field house is double that for about the same space, different space. And I realize how busy our, we expect for that over time to increase substantially, where we would see about $250,000 a year in revenue to the city in comparison to the $4,000 that we're receiving right now. We have one other item that's significant as it relates to the financial impact that the city would receive in the financial benefit. Right now, our food and beverage partner, our concessionaire, M Culinary, is housed out of the Montera facility. And the Montera facility has a commercial kitchen, commercial cold storage. In the event that that Montera facility is either subleased or those rights are sold to another organization, the city has to find space within the Westworld footprint to build a new concessionaire space, and that space could be very, very expensive. I don't have the costs on that. We did not identify a reasonable, viable space in an initial evaluation of the space at Westworld to do a full move of the food and beverage area. So we would save all of that expense. And then finally, we would see what we feel is a pretty good addition to the rental portfolio at Westworld. Right now, the smallest space that we have to rent is 37,000 square feet. The next is 120,000 square feet, and a lot of our customers aren't looking for that. Even existing event producers who wish to hold ancillary events at Westworld don't have a lot of options. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Councilwoman Littlefield, does that answer?
That answers my questions as to why we're doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman White.
Thank you very much, Nick. At this point, I would open public comment, and seeing none on consent agenda items 1 through 11. Therefore, I will close public comment. This time, I make a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 8, and 10 and 11. So we would be omitting item number 9. So I move to approve those.
Second.
Thank you. Seeing no further comment, please record your vote. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Next, we will, I'm taking a little liberty as chair. I would move to, I'm going to change the order of our agenda by placing item number 17 as our next, which is the nominations of boards and commissions. Just to keep everybody up to date again, we will return to the regular agenda. The regular agenda would include item number 9 as well as 12 as listed. So at this point, I turn this portion of the meeting over to Vice Mayor Barry Graham.
Thank you, Mayor. I will try to get through this as quickly as possible. Tonight is a nominations only. This is not an appointment meeting, so we're just doing names. And I'll read the script here. Rommel, are you ready to go? Okay, very good. Thank you, Mayor. This evening, the City Council will be nominating Scottsdale residents interested in serving on citizen advisory boards and commissions and committees. Scottsdale City Council is responsible for establishing city policies and enacting laws in support of these policies. Council relies on volunteer, citizen-based boards and commissions to research issues and make recommendations in support of the Council's missions and goals. The information and recommendations provided by Council-appointed advisory boards is a valuable tool in helping Council members in their deliberations. Appointments for these positions are made at a special City Council meeting in December. As we begin our process this evening, I'd like to remind my colleagues that an applicant only needs to receive one nomination in order to advance to interview before the Council. When I call on you, if your chosen applicant or applicants have already been nominated by another council member, please state no additional and we will move on. Thank you. Let's get started. Environmental Advisory Commission provides guidance and prioritization of future environmental activities and recommends environmental policies to the City Council. Special qualifications are required. The members of the board shall reflect both scientific and non-scientific interests. Terms for Uta Brady and Andrew Shank expire in November. Both are eligible for reappointment and have submitted applications for reconsideration. Ryan Johnson's term expires in December and is ineligible for reappointment. There are 3 vacancies and 13 applicants. The applicants are as follows. You need me to read these off, Rommel? No? Ben, do I need to read all the names? I'm good, okay. He said so. I will now entertain nominations for the Environmental Advisory Commissions. I will start to the very end, as I always do, with Councilmember Caputi. And,
Hi.
oh, sorry, there's 3 openings, so you can name 3.
Thank you. I will nominate Uta Brady, Andrew Scheck, and Siobhan Ulrich Power.
No additional.
I will nominate Scott Newell as an additional.
No additional.
No additional.
No additional.
I'll nominate Judah Waxenbaum, Joshua Stearns. Did anybody say Stearns yet? I don't think so. And John Knapp. Move on, Rommel?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Historic Preservation Commission. 2 openings. The Historic Preservation Commission oversees the development and management of Scottsdale's historic preservation program. Special qualifications. As outlined in our code, each member shall have demonstrated special interest, knowledge, and experience in at least one of the following: building construction history, architecture history, real estate historic preservation law, or other historic preservation-related field. Courtney Lage's term expires in November. She is eligible for reappointment, and she has reapplied. Peter Hosmer's term expires in December and is ineligible for appointment. 2 vacancies, 5 applicants. The applicants are Kat Jordovich, Brandon Fadden, Ryan Hilburn, Courtney Lodge, Victoria Matera. I'll start with Councilmember Janet.
Thank you. Braden Fadden and Courtney Lodge.
Kat Djranovic and Courtney Lodge.
No additional.
No additional.
No additional.
No additional.
Ryan Hilbin.
When I get the nod from you, Rommel, I'll move on. Okay, we're good. Library Board opening. Library Board advises the City Council on general policy relating to the program, services, and future development of the Scottsdale Public Libraries. George Hartz resigned from the board in October. There is 1 vacancy and 1 applicant. The applicant is Janice Shimokubo. Councilmember Littlefield, do you nominate this person?
I do.
Very good. We'll move on. Lost Trust Fund Board. Responsible for recommendations to the City Council regarding the administration of the Lost Trust Fund. Special qualifications. The City Council shall appoint 5 joint trustees, of whom no more than 1 shall be a member of the City Council. No more than 1 trustee may be a city employee. Linda Wani's term expired in May and is ineligible for reappointment. 1 vacancy, 1 applicant. Mayor.
Mark Stevens.
Very good. McDowell Sonoran Preserve Commission provides citizen oversight for acquisition, preservation, management, and stewardship of the McDowell Mountain and related Sonoran Desert for the benefit of this and future generations. Mark Hathbark's term expired and is ineligible for reappointment. 1 vacancy and 8 applicants. They are Courtney Clifford, Nicholas Hartman, Pruitt Layton, Stephen Lickblau, Michael Pomarco, Elizabeth Reich, Reed Schofield, and Jeff Varda. Entertaining nominations, I'll start with Councilmember Whitehead.
Pruitt Layton.
You need 2, don't you?
Just one.
Oh, just 1. Okay. Nicholas Hartman.
No additional.
No additional.
No additional.
Michael Pomarico.
No additional.
Thank you. Neighborhood Advisory Commission advises and makes recommendations to council on policies, plans, strategies, and programs for the preservation, improvement, and revitalization of Scottsdale's housing and neighborhoods. Larry Hewitt's term expires in December. He is eligible for reappointment, and he reapplied. 1 vacancy, 3 applicants. And I will start, they are David Creed, Larry Hewitt, and Marissa Jimenez. I will start with Councilmember Durham.
Larry Hewitt.
No additional.
No additional.
No additional.
No additional.
No additional.
No additional.
Paths and Trails Subcommittee advises the Transportation Commission and provides a public forum for issues surrounding paths and trails. Special qualifications. 1 Parks and Recreation Commissioner, 2 non-commission members. Non-commission members are appointed by the City Council for terms of 3 years with a maximum of 2 terms. Kyle Davis was appointed to the Transportation Commission in September and held a citizen representative position. There's 1 vacancy and 3 applicants. The applicants are Sarah Hecht, Jack Roberts, Molly Rosen. I'll start with me. I'll go with Molly Rosen.
Sarah Hecht.
Jack Robbins.
And that is everyone. Veterans Advisory Commission, 4 openings. Advises City Council on veteran programs, policies, and practices, and serve as a community connection point for veterans and the community in which they live. Terms for Land Anderson, Mark Ashley, Stephen Jackson, and Joel Stemple expire November. Land Anderson, Mark Ashley, and Stephen Jackson are eligible for reappointment. Only Mr. Ashley and Mr. Jackson have submitted new applications for consideration. 1 vacancy. That's a typo, right? There's 4 openings. Okay. 4 vacancies. 12 applicants. The applicants are Mark Ashley, Stephen Casares, Lynn Gallagher, Robert Gelb, Stephen Jackson, Marcy Costewa, Michael Lisi, Tyler Penchak, Hank Scherf, Mike Smotherman, Donna Tu, and Pauline Zara. I'll start with Councilmember Caputi.
Mark Ashley, Stephen Casares, Stephen Jackson, and Pauline Zara.
No additional.
Mark Ashley, Stephen Jackson, Tyler Penchek, and Hank Scherf.
Stephen Cesare?
Already nominated.
No additional.
Oh, Stephen Cesares, that's it, just 1.
He was already,
I nominated.
it's up to,
Mr. Durham.
I would add Donna too.
Hank Scherf, Mike Smotherman. Anybody nominate Smotherman?
No. I got him on the board for you, Vice Mayor.
Very good. And Councilmember Caputi already went. I got through that fast, real fast. This concludes our nomination process this evening. Individuals nominated will be contacted by city staff with additional information. Thank you to all who applied to serve on a citizen advisory board or commission. If you were not nominated, your application will remain on file for 1 year for consideration at a future date if there are additional vacancies. And with that, I turn it back to the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Before we go on to the regular agenda items, I do want to remind everyone that per our rules of procedure, unauthorized remarks, demonstrations, and noise, applause, etc., only delay the meeting, so we ask that everyone adhere to proper decorum as we proceed. There was a request for item number 9 to be moved to regular agenda, so we will have the full presentation of item 9, then we'll go to 12, 13, and 14 and 15.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Kevin Rose. I'm the Interim Water Resources Director. And what we're requesting tonight that was on consent was for the interim agreement to share costs for the feasibility studies and testing of the 91st Avenue Advanced Water Purification Facility for direct potable reuse. As you can see here on the map, Phoenix is looking to do a regional plant where we could get water from them and build it just north of 91st Avenue, which we are in agreement with them with the sub-regional operating group. The regional facility would produce advanced purified water, just like the campus, and would be conveyed to us through the distribution system through Phoenix. This is a regional opportunity for us. Multiple cities are interested and will be entering into this agreement, and this is to advance the design and construction and the governance of an operating multi-party, what Phoenix calls AWPF, Advanced Purification Facility. The initial scope is to see the feasibility, which Scottsdale would have 7.46% of the flows from the facility. Our cost would be $223,800 for Scottsdale. So with that, we are at, Scottsdale Water is asking to adopt Resolution 13266, approving contract number 2024-182 between the cities of Phoenix and Scottsdale and other parties to share the costs and feasibility studies for testing 91st Avenue Water Purification Facility. And with that, I'd be happy to address any questions you may have.
Thank you. We'll lead off with Councilwoman Whitehead, then Vice Mayor Graham.
So I'm very familiar with this facility, but I think many of our residents are not. Perhaps you can provide some information to the public about where our flows go north and how the rest of our flows go south actually already to this facility.
So currently at the water campus, we take about 14 million gallons a day of wastewater to treat and either recharge in the aquifer or just in the golf courses. We are looking into the capabilities as drought does impact us to clean the water up and potentially send it in our water distribution system. Further south, right around Indian Bend Road and south of that, we send about 8 million gallons a day to City of Phoenix, 91st Avenue Wastewater Treatment Plant. We're in agreement with them to send those flows where they take that water, clean it up themselves, and reuse it for Palo Verde Nuclear Generating Station for cooling water. They've been doing this for decades. Now with drought impacting not only Scottsdale, but the whole State Valley, Phoenix has taken the opportunity to take some of that effluent, clean it up by putting a water treatment plant, similar to what we have at the campus, to clean that water up and put it in a distribution system, and we may have an opportunity to capture some of that water as an additional resource.
Thank you. And I just want to point out, because this is such an area of interest of mine, not only are we recycling water, Scottsdale water at this regional plant, but we're also turning sewer gas into energy. I think it's the largest such project in the country, with, I can't think of the name of the company, that is turning our sewer gas into energy.
Yes, at 91st Avenue, and the company name slips my mind too.
It starts with an A.
I think it's Amoresco, but I'm not too sure.
Amoresco. Anyway, so I think that's just a great example of what interests all of us, and that's that in the old days we called things waste, in the new days we call things resources, and that includes your sewage and your sewer gas. So thank you.
Vice Mayor Graham.
Thank you, Kevin. Councilmember Whitehead just brought up the repurpose of sewer. Does that have anything to do with this item that we're talking about today?
No, it does not.
Okay. So are we authorizing like about $250,000 here, $223,000 to feasibility study this?
Vice Mayor Graham, that is correct.
Okay. And then I was looking at Schedule E. There's a long list of the very last page of the packet, because we're talking about recycled water here, and so I have questions about that. This Schedule E, did you put that schedule together, Schedule E? At the very last page?
No, that was, Vice Mayor Graham, that was put together by the City of Phoenix as part of the agreement.
Okay, so like next year, program management, long-term financial plan, $500,000, and then the next year, $270 million. The following year, $26 million. The following year, $1.5 billion. Is that we'd be paying, if we move forward, we'd be paying about 7.4% of that?
Vice Mayor Graham, that is correct.
So I think I calculated, that would be all about $200 million over, is all in if we continued all the way through this?
Vice Mayor Graham, I'd have to calculate it myself, sorry.
Okay. Have you done a cost estimate at like all the money we'd be putting into this for recycled water into our distribution system? How much that cost over 10 years, present valued per acre foot?
Vice Mayor Graham, that would be part of the feasibility study. Not only can see the constructability, but also see the cost per acre foot of what that would be.
How much would it cost for us just to go off the market or go onto the market and just buy like per acre feet? What would the cost of that be?
Vice Mayor Graham, that fluctuates, and I don't have those numbers in front of me.
Do you have any idea why other cities haven't joined, like Peoria or anything? Do you have any knowledge about that?
Vice Mayor Graham, Peoria was committed initially, then they pulled out for whatever particular reason.
You don't know why?
No.
And then it says we can withdraw any time, right?
Vice Mayor Graham, that is correct.
But if we get in there that year, like the year where there's $1.5 billion, and we decide to withdraw that year, we're on the hook for all those costs for that particular year.
Vice Mayor Graham, not sure I understand your question. I'll try to answer it.
Yeah.
So with this agreement, once we go forward and we pay through things, and if we decide at the end, for whatever reason, we decide to pull out, whatever costs we've already put into it, that's for us to bear. Any future costs, we do not bear.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay. Councilwoman Whitehead, but I do want to point out that I will open public comment. There is no public comment on this issue, therefore I will close public comment. Councilwoman Whitehead, and I also have.
Thank you. Yeah, stay up there, Kevin. And I appreciate Vice Mayor Graham's questions. We're the what is the cost of doing it? I am the what is the cost of not doing it? And so we know that we're facing up to 30% water cuts. So I do think it's helpful, and I know that Gretchen brings us regular presentations. And I think that's what we have to look at, is the cost of water past, while we all liked it, is gone. And the cost of water future and the availability of water is what is at stake. But it is important for all of us to, or for the public to have information on these projections. So obviously for 22 years, we have operated a plant that now Phoenix wants to copy, and we're glad, because in water you don't want to win, you want everybody to win, because that's how it's going to save us all. So I do think that perhaps additional information for Vice Mayor Graham and for the public just on and again, I just cannot stress enough, our sewage is already flowing to this plant. Our sewage is going there because we don't have the pumping capacity to get it up to our plant. So I just want to bring up that there's the cost of not doing it too, and perhaps additional information in an upcoming presentation would be helpful to this council and also to the public. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You know, Scottsdale Water has the most advanced water purification technology. Other cities are looking at our lead. And I'm talking about what we have already at the plant just north of 101. So this is an effort for regional partners to catch up with Scottsdale. And the design and engineering, we have proof of concept with our plant. We know that it can work. At the same time, they're looking at upgrades to their plant. The cost of actually building the plant they'll probably have to go to some federal funding probably to make that happen, because it's way beyond any city's ability, except us. We got it done. We got it done early, and we paid for it ourselves with our own balance. So it's another opportunity to open up a water resource that otherwise would be just purged downhill. We have Councilwoman Janik, Councilwoman Littlefield, and then Councilmember Durham. Thank you. Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Kevin. Could you give me an example of what the actual testing would be? I understand on the feasibility studies, you'll be looking at cost per acre foot, et cetera. Just what is involved in the testing aspect?
Councilwoman Janik, so the testing aspect would be testing the current water quality coming out of the effluent and also the water in the, for disposal of the brine. So how they would dispose of it and where would they dispose of it to?
Okay, and then, thank you. And one other question is, well, a comment. When you present this data, make sure that you have the market cost too of the purchase of an acre foot with the variation plus minus. I think that would be good comparative information. And with that, I would like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 13266 to authorize agreement number 2024-182 COS and the Water Resource Executive Director designee to perform all acts necessary to give effective to their cost share agreement and resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We have Councilwoman Littlefield wishing to speak, and then we'll vote on the motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I just would like to say I agree with the comments that Councilwoman Whitehead said. We need to, however, keep up to date on what's happening and what's going forward, not only for this council, but for our citizens as well. And so I would like to request that you present to us on a regular basis updates on how this is going, what the problems are, what the good things are, and let everybody know so that we can feel comfortable with this. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please record your vote. The ayes carry, 6 with Vice Mayor Graham dissenting, so it carries 6-1. Thank you. Next, we will move on to item number 12 in our regular agenda, known as Marado Village. It's a minor general plan amendment and rezoning. The case is number 1, GP-2024 and 1ZN 2024. Staff presenter is Jeff Barnes. Hello, good to see you. Thanks.
Good evening, Mayor Ortega, Vice Mayor Graham, members of the City Council. I'm Jeff Barnes with the city's planning department. I'd like to start out, the applicant had submitted a request for a continuance earlier today, and before I get into my presentation, I wanted to check with you and see, would you like to hear from the applicant on that, discuss that at all before I get too far?
I think we have to have a motion to continue before we discuss that, because it's not on the agenda. So we can have a motion and a second, and then have the applicant speak. Whether it carries or not, we would know. So out of courtesy, I'll make the motion to consider the applicant's continuance.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. At this point,
Point of order. Do you want to put a date?
no, this is only a continuance discussion, and we would need to discuss that with.
Thank you.
You could ask for a point of clarification, too. That would help. Thank you. Okay, so at this point, I would ask the applicant to come forward, and the topic is the continuance, and there may be people here wishing to speak. I know we did receive some emails regarding a continuance, but it is now being heard directly. Thank you.
Mayor, members of City Council, Kurt Jones with Tiffany and Bosco. We're at 2525 East Camelback Road in Phoenix, 85016, here tonight representing the Caliber Company. The request for continuance, I think it stems back to a meeting that we had back in April where a citizen group called, I think it was Protect Scottsdale, invited us to visit with them at the Scottsdale Ranch Senior Center. So we visited with them, went through our application, and what was interesting about that meeting was there was not a lot of people in favor of the project at that meeting. It was more of an information gathering, but I think there was a consensus at the time where someone just spoke up and said, hey, if you just make this for sale condominiums, we'll be in favor of it. And I think the rest of the crowd just kind of said, yeah, that's a great idea. Why aren't you going to do that? And so we took it back under consideration, and we left that meeting. We talked about it, but we moved the case forward as is. We received a numerous amount of emails this early yesterday from what came to the city council, I guess over the weekend and past week or so. Some of those emails have echo the same comments with regards to a for sale. What we'd like to do is request a continuance this evening to your December 4th hearing. Give us time to potentially put a deed restriction on the property to allow it only for a for sale type residential use. Talk to those those stakeholders that discussed that with us in our outreach throughout this process, and then come back to you on the 4th with sort of a resolution to that issue. So with that, we're asking for a continuance December 4th and greatly appreciate that request.
Okay, are there any questions by council? If not, I will move to public comment. Public comment is confined to the question of a continuance. We're not speaking on the details of the project itself. The date suggested was December 5th. Is that an optional day?
Mayor, I believe it was December 4th.
So I wanted to hear it correct. Thank you. So
And it is a scheduled meeting date.
It is a scheduled meeting day. Was there also an optional day possible for the council or not?
There is, Mayor, December 5th is an optional meeting date as well.
So we would just be looking at the calendar and seeing how many agenda items may fit. I'm just trying to give you some space here to.
Yeah, Mayor, and I believe planning staff may be able to speak better to this, but if the council were to continue, I think they need to continue it to a date certain tonight so that the planning staff can advertise, but I don't want to speak for them if, I don't know, Greg. I'm sorry, oh, Jeff. I'm sorry, Jeff, is that right?
Let's get a clarification from city attorney on, please go ahead.
Yes, that's correct. Since it's such a short turnaround, we would need a motion to a date certain because we wouldn't have time to have the applicant renotice, go through all those notification procedures prior to the December meetings. So a motion to a date certain would be required.
Okay, the request is for December 4th. Does that make sense? Of 2025 or this year, 2024, is that correct? Okay,
Yeah.
So we have a motion. I had, just to be clear, I did open up for public comment, and therefore I close public comment.
Yeah, Mayor, so we have a number of individuals signed up for public comment. I don't know if any of them want to just speak to the continuance request.
I apologize. That's true. We have the original case, which was listed as agenda item number 12. And there are several speakers here who intended to speak for the record on this case. If any of them would like to speak on the continuance, please advise now. Okay. Seeing none. Now, just...
Mayor, there's one
Oh,
here.
excuse me.
near
Yes,
me.
she's one person. I'm sorry. Really? Yeah. Please state your name, come forward, and speak to the motion for a continuance as requested.
Good evening, Mayor Ortega and council members. I'm Dr. Bob Sager, address of record. The Vietnam presentation brought back memories because this week is 50 years exactly from when I moved to Scottsdale after I separated from the Air Force in the Vietnam Pacific Theater, and I treated the POWs after they got released from Hanoi. So on to the issue here. I want to say, how many iterations of multi-story, multi-family ACA apartments does Caliber Development have to present to our city before they realize this is a death by overdose? Each new iteration is termed a new project, quote unquote, thus rendering all previous citizen voter communication against approval, past history, and in the shredder. And there's been a lot of opposition to this. The lifeblood citizen voters of Scottsdale are absolutely sick and tired of apartments, and this came through with significant exclamation with the results of our November 5th election. I propose that Caliber or another company design a quality one-story single-family housing development in a gated HOA community that will greatly enhance the appearance of this area and generate high property taxes. The new mindset is housing ownership, not rentals. I do want a development there, but I want ownership. Do you lame duck mayor and council members now want to listen and understand that our Scottsdale voters want you to firmly reject this project by just saying no, and at minimum, pass it on to January with a new slate of mayor and council members? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have another speaker who wishes to speak on the continuance, the motion to continue? Seeing none, therefore I will close. Excuse me, is there a hand up in the, oh, someone's waving to, but it's
Stretching.
now just, he's bidding back there and raised his hand by, I know. Anyway, so seeing none, we will therefore close public comment. At this point, I have Councilwoman Littlefield wishing to speak again on the continuance motion. Go ahead.
Yes, I just had a question actually for our city clerk. Does it make a difference on the agendas for either of those two nights that we currently have, for which one would be more appropriate to put this on?
That's a good question.
Yeah, thank you, Councilwoman Littlefield. Actually, the December 3rd and December 4th agendas are already quite busy, so we may need to move some other items around, but whatever date you all settle on for this item, we will make sure it's on that date.
Okay, so it's basically the same for either one.
Either one, and then we do have the optional date as well that we'll be looking at, but we need to talk to you all individually to make sure you can make the optional meeting date.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Whitehead?
Yeah, I have a question for staff because this is a quick turnaround and it is a big change in this project. I'm just wondering, I guess from the applicant and the staff, when a change from apartments to for sale condos, it seems like it changes possibly the size, the shape. It seems like it makes a lot of changes. Is that realistic from both the applicant and staff to turn it around for December 5th? It sounds like we're settling on December 5th.
Mayor and Councilwoman Whitehead, that's a great question. With the request to keep this all for sale uses, the development plan doesn't change at all. Site plan doesn't change. The elevations may change a little bit for some more floor to ceiling height space for the units, but everything stays within the development plan. And what's unique about our case is it's a PUD, but we have no amended development standards. And the case would stay the same. No amended development standards with the request for sale only.
Okay, thank you. Staff have anything to say about that?
Mayor and Councilwoman Whitehead, if that's the case, we are not anticipating that it will alter the development plan either. So as long as it can all fit within the parameters, we're not anticipating complications in the turnaround time, as the materials would be relatively reflective of what they're still proposing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other councilman wishing to speak? Seeing none. At this point, we have a motion for a continuance to December 4th.
December 4th.
Excuse me,
we have another public comment.
Sir, please step forward, state your place of residence, and you have 3 minutes, sir. On the continuance alone, the question. Yes, sir, go ahead.
My name is John Nichols. I'm a
Come up to the, there you go.
I'm a 34-year resident of Scottsdale and active in the public comments. I live at 10450 East Desert Cove Avenue in Scottsdale. The Marado property proposed to be upzoned to mixed-use neighborhoods has been before this council a number of times and subject to very vigorous public opposition. The building that would be demolished to allow the building of these new residences is a grade A commercial property. My wife is a CPA and she worked in that building for many years when it was leased by PCS. The proposal to upzone this to mixed-use neighborhoods would permit the current building to be demolished to put in a large number of apartments. The Marado issue has been reviewed by this council and was subjected to major vocal citizen opposition. The most persuasive argument against this is the traffic issue on Shea. Shea, most hours, is jammed with heavy traffic blocking westbound and eastbound traffic, to include ambulances coming off the 101 to bring critical patients to the ER at the hospital. Changing this to mixed-use neighborhoods puts these patients at serious risk. Permitting this property be changed to mixed-use neighborhoods would be a windfall financially for the developer and runs contrary to the public opposition against development. This public opposition figured significantly in the recent mayor and council election. I strongly recommend that the council turn down this upzone request. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And for clarity, you could leave your memo with the clerk. Now I close public comment once more. We have a motion. Thank you, sir. You may sit down. Thank you, sir. We have a motion and a second. Please record your vote.
Mayor, I apologize. Can you note the date on?
For December 4th.
Okay, fantastic.
December 4th.
Thank you.
Right. So the motion carries for a continuance to December 4th, 6-1. Councilwoman Janik votes no. Next, we will move on to item number 13. Item number 13 is the Paloma conditional use permit, case number 7, UP 2023. Staff presenter is Greg Bloomberg. And we also have the applicant, of course, standing by.
Thank you, Mayor Ortega and members of council. Greg Bloomberg with Current Planning, here to give you an introductory presentation for the Paloma conditional use permit, 7 UP 2023. As you mentioned, that'll be followed up by a presentation from the applicant team. It's hard to see on this particular graphic, but the site is located on Saddlebag Drive, south of Camelback Road in the Entertainment District. Sorry about that. Is this better? Okay. Here's a close-up look at the site. This is a little bit of an outdated aerial. There's actually a new building under construction at this location that would house this establishment when it's completed. So let me do a brief summary here for you. This is a request for a bar conditional use permit for a building under construction. The establishment would operate as a hybrid, which we have several of in the city, a restaurant by day, and would transition to a bar at night. There is noise mitigation provided, and that is a result of some discussions at the Development Review Board hearing, actually, and I'll get into those in just a moment. There are 17 remote parking spaces proposed. All of those are available, verified by staff, and they meet the ordinance criteria for remote parking, and there was public comment received. So again, this is kind of hard to read, but it's a two-level facility. The ground floor is primarily indoor space. And then on the second floor, you have a balcony, a very large balcony for patrons to sit and enjoy. So at the 10/9/2024 Planning Commission hearing, this is the main reason this is on the regular agenda. There was a lengthy discussion regarding noise mitigation that was instigated by the public speaker, and there was quite a bit of discussion. And as a result of that discussion, two additional stipulations were recommended by the Planning Commission. One was for a minimum 42-inch high plexiglass barrier along the perimeter of the second floor balcony, and the other was for the owner to utilize a compressor or limiter to cap noise at ambient levels for the surrounding area. I had no idea what a compressor or a limiter was, so I Googled it myself, and they are basically what they claim to do, and they are devices that can actually cap noise levels. So that would have to be implemented as part of this CUP approval. And after all that discussion, there was a recommendation of approval that passed 5-1 with the additional steps. And then just a real brief, the applicant again into some of the noise mitigation measures in a little more detail, but I wanted to show you the details that were provided for the Development Review Board hearing, because again, there was discussion about that. And the applicant was challenged with providing some architectural design measures to deal with noise mitigation. And the one I probably just want to focus on is probably that lower left image there that shows pretty much a solid wall that would deflect some of that noise back in towards the establishment. This graphic up here on the upper left shows you what was approved for the Scottsdale Collection zoning case. The only reason why that's on there is to show you that there could very well be a building 96 feet in height eventually built on that site. If that was to happen, that would obviously mitigate some of the noise concerns as well. So that completes staff's presentation. Unless there are immediate questions for me, I will turn it over to the applicant for their presentation.
Sure. At this point, I see a Councilmember Durham wishes to speak, but I also want to clarify, I do not see any requests to speak from the public. So unless someone else comes forward, I will open and close public comment. At this point, Councilmember Durham and Councilwoman Caputi have some questions, and of course, we'll go to the applicant for their presentation. Councilmember Durham.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question about this compressor limiter thing, because I've never heard that, and it sounds like you've done some research on it. So if you could elaborate a little bit about what that is and how it would work, I would appreciate that.
Mayor Ortega and Councilmember Durham, I basically just looked it up to see what it was. I didn't get a lot of details about what it actually does. What I would probably do is let the applicant kind of explain that and give you some more details about it.
Yeah, that would probably be a good idea.
Okay, Councilwoman Caputi.
Greg, just real quick, this project has already done some pretty extensive renovations. They're so far down the path. Why do we do it like that? Why do we let someone get so invested in a project and then say, oh, by the way, now you have to apply for a CUP? Always wondered that. Seems a little backward and a weird position to put an applicant in.
Yeah, Mayor Ortega and Councilwoman Caputi, it is kind of a fine line that we have to walk in these situations. We can't really prevent a building from going through a design process based on land use because the Development Review Board has no say in land use. So if they want to go through the Development Review Board process and get the design for their building approved and pull permits to start construction, they understand that they still have to get approval of a conditional use permit for the land use itself. So it may seem a little backwards, but that's the way the DR process works. They can't say anything about land use.
Yeah, to me that seems really strange. They want to serve food and beverage, and now here they are with almost a beautiful product and coming back to us saying, now can we actually do what we've prepared for your city? It just seems odd to me.
Understood.
That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll move on to the applicant.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Ashley Marsh, Gamage and Burnham, 40 North Central, for your records. To address Councilmember Durham's question first, if I may, a noise limiter compressor is attached to DJ equipment, and it regulates the noise such to that of the ambient noise condition. So it limits any type of noise that exceeds the ambient. I had to do some homework as well, but that piece of equipment attaches itself to the DJ equipment and is part of our CUP application. So if there's additional questions, happy to address those, but that's kind of the gist of what the noise limiter is. It's a piece of audio equipment that gets put into the DJ system.
Thank you, that helps.
Thank you very much. I'll be very brief in our presentation. This is for the Paloma, and I'm very excited to be here with Jock Concepts. We've got our whole development team here, including Ryan Jock, principal, Nicholas Zabrowski, senior planner, Artie Viegel, our architect, and Tony Sola, a sound engineer who we required. But again, I started this saying I'm very proud to be here with Ryan and with Jock Concepts. They are a great historic veteran restaurant entrepreneur in Scottsdale. They're proud owners and operators and great corporate citizens of Diego Pops, Hot Chick, Montauk, Pretty Please Lounge. Ryan and his wife Caitlin founded Chop Shop, and I live in the Desert Ridge area now, so I'm trying desperately to get them to open one there. But just great Scottsdale corporate citizens. Greg shared a little bit of our context, and just want to put into more context that this is for a new concept for Jock called Paloma. It's immediately next to the Riot House and just south of Camelback, with Winfields and Pretty Please across the street. We did spend quite a bit of time in DRB. Let me back up just one second. This is the old building that you'll see. This was vacant for about 10 years, office property, where the new Paloma site will sit. Paloma will be a food-forward concept with a restaurant and bar component. And that bar component is just really because as the night goes on, the liquor to food ratio sales change, but very much a restaurant in our entertainment district. Greg went over that last picture, so I won't go over in too much detail. But in addition to the buffering that you would see, there's also in design review the saddle, which would go over the right-of-way. The development proposal is to allow that bar addition to the restaurant. So again, food-forward, Mediterranean-inspired menu. We are seeking that bar CUP because as the night goes on, again, that liquor to food sales just changes naturally as the night progresses. The zoning is in place, and it is currently under construction, which will show 5,600 square foot patio, 34 building height, 34 spaces required, and 34 parking spaces provided. So as Greg mentioned, we do meet the parking requirements. This is where we spent a lot of time the last year or two, is talking about these elevations and any noise mitigation. So this is the building that was approved in DRB about 2 years ago now. And as you can see, it is very lush, very heavily landscaped area. There are some open penetrations on the western perimeter, which would go through Saddleback Trail. But the north side is where we spent a lot of time and made a lot of improvements from DRB to now. So you'll see on that north elevation, there's 20-foot wall, and the entitlement for that building before is up to 96 feet. You'll see here the metal lattice, and that is in 2 areas in this open air concept. Part of what came out of DRB is, gosh, this is a great looking building, but we really have a little bit of concern about what that northern perimeter looks like. So following that DRB, and Artie, our architect, probably hates this picture because I changed his pretty rendering, but Ryan and his team went ahead and enclosed those metal lattice areas and provided additional screening on that north perimeter. So it's basically closed in where you would be concerned about any of that sound mitigation. As we mentioned, we are well along into construction now, and you see those improvements along that northern facade. That metal lattice is screened in with block wall, which you'll see. the northern perimeter was extended here. And from our Planning Commission last month, we've added additional stipulations, the sound limiter, as well as adding plexiglass around that second floor patio to go ahead and address any sound mitigation. So again, this is a restaurant with a bar component in our Old Town area. We've since worked with that individual who has expressed concerns at our Planning Commission. We believe these stipulations from Planning Commission go ahead and address his concerns. We have full staff approval, we have DRB approval, and we sure would like City Council approval to bring this restaurant and bar to the Old Town area. So with that, I'll keep it brief, and I'm just happy to address any of your questions.
Thank you. I see Vice Mayor Graham wishing to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. What was this facility operating as before?
Vice Mayor Graham, it was an office building, and my understanding has been vacant for quite some time. It's that white building you see there.
So why did they, I guess, I'm just curious, maybe you don't know the answer, but why were all these investments and, construction costs invested before the permit was granted?
Vice Mayor Graham, thank you for that question. It is a restaurant with a bar component, and we are asking now for the CUP in full anticipation of that just change in the evening hours when alcohol sales do an uptick. We're again gone through the process. We did have some back and forth of when to bring the CUP, and there was some confusion in that process of when to do that, if the public safety plan needed to be approved first or the CUP needed to go first. There was a little bit of a change in process, so it was delayed in our CUP application. The PSP has been approved, and now our CUP is here.
So they went ahead with the investment sort of at risk, assuming or hoping that everything would work out.
Vice Mayor Graham, not so much at risk, but you're right, their timing is a little off, and that was from confusion on when the public safety plan needed to be in place.
What in that facility, there's a lot of other bars and nightlife. What would you say it would be most similar to in that facility as far as what people would think about Paloma?
Vice Mayor, thank you for that question. This is intended to be a food-forward restaurant with, again, that bar component. So I don't know if there's a comparable because it is more restaurant than nightclub. And you see a lot of nightclubs here. There's no live entertainment. There's no liquor bar, service like you might have. So it's more of a restaurant than anything else.
In that area, in your opinion, would anybody, because you're talking about the way people perceive it, would you say any facilities in that area people would perceive as a restaurant?
Vice Mayor, I would anticipate these are more nightclubs.
Right.
Our proposal is to operate more like the Diego Pops and Montauk, similar to Jock Concepts.
So you're going to be the first restaurant there.
There's plenty of restaurants, Vice Mayor. I would just say that this is intended to be an elevated experience, a more food-forward experience.
And this question for Greg Bloomberg, you said 17 remote parking spots were secured. Where are they? Do you have some sort of pictorial representation of where those are secured?
Can you go ahead and switch back to my presentation?
And is that a 24/7 security, parking lot security, or is that during certain hours?
Mayor Ortega and Councilman Graham, that's only during the hours after 5 p.m. when it becomes a bar.
So it's dependent on operational hours?
Correct. So forgive my lack of technical expertise on this, but the pink is the location of the actual establishment, and the red areas are the locations of the remote parking. They are all within 600 feet of the establishment as required by ordinance, and there is direct, safe, continuous pedestrian connectivity from each of these locations to the establishment. This is a rather long walk, but there is a direct, safe, continuous pedestrian connection, so it meets the ordinance requirements.
Do you have you reviewed those? You said the parking spots were secured. Have you reviewed the agreements?
Mayor Ortega and Councilman Graham, yes. We review them for accuracy and also for availability.
Okay, how long is the term?
Typically 5 years.
Okay. Did you double check that those spots had not been rented to other tenants?
Councilman Ortega, or I'm sorry, Mayor Ortega and Councilman Graham. Yes, we always make sure that they're not being double dipped, so to speak.
Very good.
And leased to somebody else.
Okay. I want to ask you about this noise limiter. The noise limiter, it's in the CUP, so we're conditionalizing it. But you said you really didn't know much about it. Is that right?
Personally, that's correct. I don't know too much about it.
If you don't know much about it, how do you know it works?
I would defer to the applicant to answer that question.
But we're kind of enforcing or double checking it, right? So I'm just curious, have we put that condition on any other CUPs in the area or in Scottsdale?
Councilman Graham, this is the first time it's come up for a conditional use permit for a bar. They did have a noise engineer that brought that up at the Planning Commission hearing, so the planning commissioners or the commission decided to include that as a stipulation.
So it's the first one in the city, right?
That I'm aware of. There may be somebody using one that we're not aware of, but this is the first time it's been stipulated as bar CUP.
How would you check that it was working?
Councilman Graham, we would probably, once it's installed, we would probably have police department and or code enforcement go out there and do some measurements if necessary to see if it's doing its job and see if it's working.
Those are all my questions for now. Thanks, Greg.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Did you have any other response from the applicant? Okay.
No, thank you, Mayor.
Sure. You know, at this point, this project has gone through the DRB process, and you know, the question is kind of puzzling. Why did they build it before they got the use permit? And it's very simple. You know, every season, if you miss Christmas and you're a retailer and you miss that season, you're short about 35–40% of your profit. So they're probably going to be pushing immediately to finish it off, right, and gain that season. If you lose it, you'll never catch up, you know, from May to August. So that makes very good business sense. At this point, I'm open to a motion and a second. Councilwoman Janik?
Sorry. I'd like to make a motion to approve Paloma Conditional Use Permit 7 UP 2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion, please record your vote. Okay, the motion carries 6-1 with Vice Mayor dissenting. Next,
Mayor?
we will move to the...
Mayor, can I just clarify for the record, sorry, Sherry
Sorry,
Scott,
yes.
City Attorney, that motion included adopting resolution number 13245. I just want to clarify that for the record.
Yes.
Thank you. That is confirmed with the maker of the motion. And next, we will move on to item number 14. Item number 14 is regarding the Scott Resort parking reduction request, case number 4, DR 2024. Greg Bloomberg, stay where you are. Oh, you're presenting this one as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ortega, council members. As you mentioned, Greg Bloomberg here to present, give you an opening presentation for the Scott Resort parking reduction, which is related to case 4 DR 2024. There will be an applicant presentation to follow. So the site is located at the southeast corner of Scottsdale Road and Chaparral. To the north is another resort. I think it's still called Chaparral Suites. And then to the east and to the south is some residential properties. Closer look at the site, just for your context. So this is the site plan for the proposed expansion, just so I could show you what we're talking about. This is where the conference room expansion would occur. The rest of the property, all the rest of this area is existing, so this is the only location that is changing in terms of the floor plan. So some background on this location. The site has been a resort or hotel for over 60 years. Many operators over the years. There is an accompanying DRB, Development Review Board, request to add the conference expansion, which includes a 4,118 square foot roof deck. Again, that's presently going through review and has not gone to a hearing yet. The conference expansion further strengthens the resort corridor as designated by the general plan, so that's certainly a positive. The request, because this, the only reason, or the main reason this is before you is because the request is for a reduction greater than 10%. The applicant proposes a reduction of 58% of the ordinance required parking. And they did provide a parking master plan for justification, and that should be included in your report, your packet. Some additional background and information. There's no documented history of parking issues caused by this resort. We've had no evidence that there's been concerns about cars parking in neighborhoods or on the street or anything of that nature. But there is the potential, if this resort is successful, for overflow impacts on surrounding residential and the hotel to the north. And there is a lack of reliable or convenient source of overflow parking that meets the ordinance location requirements. And there is no on-street parking available at this location. So overflow parking is a general concern. So far, there have been 3 reductions for parking reductions for hotels and resorts approved to date. One was for the DC Hotel, which is now known as Senna House. It's at the southeast corner of, I believe it's 75th and Camelback. That was a 37% reduction. And then there's the Canopy by Hilton, which is over on 2nd and Marshall, I believe. That was a 27% reduction. And then just recently, the Gainey Ranch Hilton came in for a reduction, and that was 17%. And the applicant is proposing, as I mentioned, a 58% reduction. So a couple of the major changes that I wanted to point out that resulted in this request. The applicant's parking master plan recommends a parking, let me just go through this line by line. For the hotel rooms themselves, the standard ordinance requirement is 1 space per room, and there's 204 rooms, so that would normally be 204 spaces. The proposed parking ratio in the parking master plan is 0.28 spaces per room, or 58 spaces. And then for the conference square footage, there's going to be 20,677 square feet total with the expansion. I believe that's the right number. And that would normally require 1 space for every 50 square feet of floor area, or 373 spaces. And they are proposing in their parking master plan to not provide any parking for their conference facilities. So that concludes my presentation, staff's presentation. If there's any questions for me, I'll answer them. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Sure. At this point, we'll move on to the applicant. Then we also have several speakers who wish to comment.
Thank you. If you can put up my presentation, that would be great. Mayor and Vice Mayor, members of the council, for your record, I'm Jordan Rose with Rose Law Group, and with me today is Mike Padula, the president of Grossman Companies, and Jake Gray, the EVP at Grossman Companies, along with Paul Basha, our traffic engineer from Summit Management, and Amber Knapp from Rose Law Group. Oh, thanks for getting that presentation started. I will note that we very much appreciate Greg and your staff working with us, and we also appreciate all of you and your input, particularly Mayor Ortega. I think some of the design elements that we talked about very early on, I think almost a year ago, they incorporated, and we're very grateful for that. Thank you. I'm just going to go through this kind of quickly, and then I'll take any questions. But essentially, we've got great existing event space. Grossman Companies has been here in the valley, in the market, operating hotels for over 60 years. This hotel particularly has been there for 60 years operating. They want to do this new event space in order to keep up with the market, in order to allow for all of their hotel rooms to always be occupied, because really they're marketing towards tourists who have conferences in their resort. And interestingly enough, in this particular resort, because of the location near downtown, they really don't have very many people who bring their cars, and I'll show you that in a second. But just to show you the architectural details, very consistent with what the Scott looks like today, an enhanced area in the front for this new conference center. So under the current ordinance, right today, the Scott is underparked by 40%. But there are always between 106 and 246 open parking spaces. And when I saw Greg's presentation come up and he flashed the aerial, you could see that it was just completely empty parking, and that's a normal thing here at the Scott, and I'll show you that. Not because they're not busy, but because people don't drive cars there. They take other sources of transportation. And interestingly enough, and I know you're all very aware, that council passed this parking ordinance that allows for council discretion on parking variations, because you wanted, as I understand it, to see these things on a case-by-case basis, because they're all different. And this one is very different, and we appreciate that you're taking that discretion tonight to look at this. So this has been operating for 60 years. They know their business. They want to just stay competitive. They're not adding rooms or anything like that. And so I'll just take you through the parking currently would require 3 parking spaces per 1 guest in this hotel. And that's troubling for this particular hotel, because that would require the Scott to have 482 parking spaces, and they currently have 96 parking spaces. So if they wanted to comply today, they would have to take out their conference center that they have and reduce it to 5,000 square feet, or take out the hotel rooms and reduce those to 18 rooms. I mean, that's ludicrous. Obviously, that's not happening, but to tell you the scope of how this would not work, I wanted to show you that. So under the code, we would be required 632 spaces. We're proposing to provide 264 spaces, and an actual need, and our study shows, is only 140 spaces. So that's 58% fewer, but it's 89% more than what they actually need. And that's based on 60 years of operation. So something to note is that this is not a speculation. This is not something that we're guessing at in any way. They've been owners and operators, and they know that this is, in fact, what's going to occur. So the request is the actual spaces that are required is 140, but we're asking to provide 264. And then I wanted to note, because we looked at we started looking at these cars. You can see they're circled in yellow. There's about 15 to 50 every single day, and they're not parked near hotel rooms. And so the management did a little tracking, and it turns out that these folks are from adjacent condos, because we have so much empty parking. Other people are parking in our spots, which is fine, but those were also included in our hotel counts. So we then wanted to go out over the last couple weeks and just see real time what this looked like, just to make sure that the counts that we got last year were still accurate. So you can see on Tuesday, October 24th, the hotel occupancy was almost as high as you can get, 98.5%, and the spaces were only 43% full. So he's still very empty. Then we go to the next day. We have, again, now it's a 60% occupancy, and you've got 60% of the spaces empty. Again, 60% occupancy. Now you got 70% of the spaces empty. The next day, about 70% occupancy, only 23%, 34% full. The next day, 57%, 80% of the spaces are unoccupied, and I can keep going on this and going, and you can see this is very consistent. We flew drones, by the way, 3 times a day, every day, for the last 2 weeks. Amber did, so she knows how to fly a drone. In any case, I'll show you some of the days that they were really full. Here, 80% occupancy, and only 27% at the peak were full. So there were 30 open spaces at one point in time, and then you have 99% occupancy, and yet there's 234 spaces empty. So full occupancy, we have 212 spaces empty, and then 98% occupancy, only 35% full. And we'll just skip through some of these because I think you get the picture. It's not really full, and I'm sure you've all driven by there to confirm this, but just a few days ago, it was only 20% full. So the other important thing is, I think we don't know of any neighbor opposition. In fact, we have neighbors, I hear we have neighbors that we don't even know that are here in support, and I know we had neighbors submit letters to the packet in support, and I think that's because they've been a good neighbor. They put millions of dollars into the property, and they're going to continue to improve the property. They're already underparked based on the current ordinance, but yet they have 106 to 249 open parking spaces every day, even when they're completely occupied. So they're a proven operator, they're a Scottsdale-based company, their parking lot is currently 2/3 empty, they're located downtown. It is a special circumstance of all special circumstances. People are attracted to walkability at this site, and that's really a testament to what you all have built here in Scottsdale. And they don't need more unused asphalt, and I don't know that the city does either. So thank you for supporting longtime business, and I would answer any questions or save any comments till after the speakers talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, we will go to public comment and then return with any council questions. You would have an opportunity to answer any public comment questions. So I show for item number 14 that there are numerous speakers who wish to come forward. You would please state your place of residence. You have 3 minutes. You'll see the counter there. We have Brent Beezer and James Hawkins, then Mark Winkleman. Hello.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. My name is Brent Beezer. I live at 7317 East Vista Drive, so I'm just about a block and a half north of this project. We've lived actually in our home for 28 years, and we frequently visit the Scott Hotel. Actually, it was Fire Sky before, but it's the Scott now. The ownership's been there for about 8 years. And they've done a beautiful job in their renovations and upgrading to the property over the several years that they've had the property. Actually, in 16 days, we're having our Thanksgiving family party there. And we've been very pleased with it. Whenever I go there to park, it's no problem. I park in the parking lot right at the front, very easy to go in there. We're visiting the place we've had, my niece's wedding, we've had, celebrations of life. We've had some wonderful events there and never had anything other than just a wonderful experience from the parking lot all the way through the whole property. So I think it's important that we keep a special jewel like this as a competitive, competitive with its competitors as far as the offerings of space for conferences and for enjoyment. And I would respectfully ask that you support this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have James Hawkins, then Mark Winkleman and Jake Gray.
Howdy. My name's Jimmy Hawkins. I live at 9776 East Sheena Drive. I've grown up in Scottsdale, and I'm here to support the Scott's request for the parking reduction. The Scott, especially the Canal Club, is the backdrop for many of my best memories in the Valley. I've celebrated birthdays, graduations, and other life events here, and it's where my friends and I go to hang out. Supporting this property means a lot to me personally. The report shows that the Scott only uses about 35% of their current parking, which makes sense. I never drive there. I always use rideshare, and so do my friends and family who stay at the hotel or visit the Canal Club. The current parking requirement feels too stringent for such an urban environment in Scottsdale. This reduction request aligns similarly with other successful requests, like the Canopy Hilton and the Senate House down the road. Supporting this reduction will help the Scott stay competitive with nearby hotels, which is essential for the longevity and success of the unique Scottsdale establishment. Personally, I'd love to see my city support local, soft-branded hotels just as much as they support large franchise hotels. Approving this reduction supports a beloved local business, preserves Old Town's character by backing a hotel that's been here for 60 years, and gives my friends and me confidence that our local spot will continue to be successful in a competitive hospitality environment. Thank you.
Mark Winkleman, Jake Gray, and David Hamblin.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, pleasure to be here. Mark Winkleman. I live at Optima Camelview, directly across the street from the Scott. I've lived there for 13 years, so I've seen it for quite a while and prior to the current ownership. It is I'd say a jewel of Scottsdale. It's one of the last old-time hotels that used to go up and down Scottsdale Road, and I think it's worth preserving. Now, I live across the street. My significant other and I walk by it, next to it, sometimes through it on a regular basis. We dine there. It's in our rotation of restaurants in the neighborhood. I can highly recommend the breakfast pizza if you're there for Sunday brunch. So we know it very well. Not once have I ever walked through there or by it and seen anything close to a parking issue. That parking lot is, well, as was said earlier, it's rarely used or it's underused. It looks to me like it was built back when it was probably a motel in its early days and built in that style, and that's what the parking looks like. And as we know, that's not how our guests and our visitors in downtown Scottsdale often travel. I can tell you, particularly during March, there's just a parade of people wearing Giants uniforms coming down Scottsdale Road out of there. So I'm not surprised that it doesn't have a parking issue. I do also live next door to the Caesars Republic Hotel. As you all know, one of the newest and shiniest ones in town. I've dined there and been there, and they have some beautiful conference rooms and conference facilities, which is great. But we need to allow hotels like the Scott to compete. I mean, they're 60 years old. They're not 1 year old. And yet they're in the same business. They compete for the same customers. So I think it's it's only fair to let them compete with the other newer hotels. As has been said, this is owned by a local business whose headquarters are just down the street here in Scottsdale. They've made a big commitment. I've watched it personally over the years, the money that's been put in and the improvements that have been made. And I think we want to encourage this, and we want to allow them to have a hotel that compete with the substantial competition that fortunately exists in Scottsdale. You all have the discretion to do parking exceptions. I think it's done for situations like this where common sense can prevail, and I urge you to use that discretion. There's no parking issue being created. I don't think there's any other options. This isn't anybody that's really substantially impacted. I think this ought to be a pretty easy decision for you all to make. Before I step down, I just want to say, as you know, I've spent a lot of time the last couple of years working with you all and city staff around parks and the preserve. And I just want to, I know that we just had the election, that 4 of you are no longer going to be part of this. I've enjoyed working with each of you. It's not the easiest thing in the world to be public servants anymore, and I want to thank all of you for serving Scottsdale well. Wish you luck in your future endeavors. The 3 of you that remain, and I think we've got some future ones sitting here in the audience, I look forward to working with you, and I think we all have the same goal of keeping Scottsdale the jewel that it is. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We have Jake Gray, David Hamblin, and Jill Hamblin.
Hi, good evening. Thanks, Mayor Ortega, Vice Mayor, Council. I echo Mark's comments on the public service, and thank you for doing that, and thank you for hearing our case tonight on parking. Many of the things I was planning to say have been said, that the Grossman Company family has been in the Valley for over 60 years. It's still a family-run business. Our headquarters is now in Old Town Scottsdale. We've owned and operated various types of real estate in the Valley over that time frame. And I think one of the competitive advantages we have is that we don't have partnerships, we don't do brand affiliations, we don't hire management companies. We insist on intimately knowing our properties and operating them. And there's nothing wrong with brands or management companies, but it's just part of our DNA. It's hard to believe we've already owned the Scott for almost 10 years, and I was involved in the acquisition and the redevelopment, and you know, I've come to know that we don't use our parking, like many folks have said, and I've also come to know that we're a bit short on our conference space. Right now, we're about 68 square feet per guest room, and we'd really want that to be about 100 square feet per guest room. It's particularly important for out-of-town groups, larger groups, that we get to that ratio. And so my pitch is pretty easy. I think we have parking spaces and asphalt we don't use, and we have a need for conference space. And so just hope you consider that tonight. And once again, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have David Hamblin and Jill Hamblin. Then Ryan Host. Again, just state your place of residence and continue. Thank you.
Mayor Ortega and members of the council, my name is David Hamblin. I'm a resident of Scottsdale, basically a block north. I live near Brent. Full disclosure, I've worked with Grossman Properties for 10 years. I was the architect of record when they did the remodel. And I'm here to basically be a witness to all the studies and data that we've seen. From 2014 to 2019, the resort was fully open and operational the whole time. So we had contractors and guests and events, and not one time did I ever see parking go out into the street or the parking lot full. So I'm also an architect, so I deal with the calculation of parking on various projects throughout Scottsdale and other places. I feel like parking requirements identified in the zoning ordinance are a great starting point for most projects, but they don't always apply to individual circumstances. It must be flexible when it doesn't align with the unique use of the property, which I think is the case here. And given the history and data, I believe this is a reasonable request for reduction of parking. And as a side note, I wasn't aware of the previous case, but when you compare the parking, they have 190 seats and they have 34 stalls. So there's obviously disparity, and it's a guideline, but it needs some flexibility. And I think Scottsdale is the place for that, because I support their project because it encourages other forms of transport, reduction in parking, reduction in heat island effect, et cetera. So I just hope you can support this reduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill Hamlin. Then we have Ryan Host, Everett Jesse, and Brian Rice. So, Jill.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for hearing our support for this case. I'm obviously connected to this gentleman. That's my husband, David. I am also an architect, so very familiar with the parking counts and all of that good data as well. I am in full support of the reduction for a few reasons. One is knowing Grossman Properties and having been with Dave, working with them for several years, they are very community-based and absolutely support the experience in their hotel. And that experience is about the community and also about the guests. So I appreciate how they are always looking forward to supporting whatever is the best experience. A reduction in parking when it would impact in a negative way would be something that they would run from. So I appreciate that with Grossman Properties. The other thing, we do frequent the location. Happy hours are often done Friday afternoon. We have never seen the parking full. So for that reason as well. The last point that I'll make is we were condo owners directly east of the property. Never did we see overflow parking issues with the condominium, and it was directly behind the hotel property. So for those three reasons, I hope that you do support the reduction in parking. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan Host, Everett Jesse, and Brian Rice.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Ryan Hosty. Live at Sonoran Village on Camelback. about a mile or so from the Scott. I frequent the Scott often with using rideshare. Go there generally to the Canal Club, have drinks with friends, and anyway, I've never seen many cars there at all. There's some up front, a few up front, but for the most part, it's wide open. So I'm just here in support for what they're doing and trying to keep the Scott a great place to go.
Everett, and then Brian.
Hi, I'm Everett, and I live at 7520 East 2nd Street. I've been in Scottsdale for about 12 years now. Before that, I lived in Las Vegas, so I've watched a lot of hotels go extinct. And so that's why I think it's particularly important for this reduction to be granted is competition in hospitality is very cutthroat. If you aren't trying your best to keep things very competitive, you can go out of business very quickly. And I think as someone that frequents the Scott, and as far as like a restored property, no one has done it better than Grossman Properties with the Scott. I mean, that's a perfect restored property. And I just like sitting in the lobby. And to be honest, I try to decorate my house kind of like it. So that's how much I appreciate the atmosphere there. But that said, I do like to leave my house, go there, enjoy some cocktails, have a fun time, and never once have I had a problem with parking, albeit, you know, I'm fairly responsible, so I ride share pretty frequently. But yeah, so in the spirit of just loving what the property is and loving what Grossman did with it, I think it's important to give them every advantage we can to keep them relevant and competitive, especially when we're allowing, you know, other bigger brands like Caesars and stuff, which, you know, great that we're doing that, but you have to give an edge to your local people while doing that, and I think that's the right way. So, thanks.
Thank you, and I show Brian Rice as the last speaker.
Hello, my name's Brian Rice. I live across the street at Optima Camel View. My partner and friends go to the Scott often, and I can guarantee when I've walked over, there's not been a parking concern as I walk in. The other aspect, I think it's, as others have said, it's a wonderful property. And so one, to be able to engage and socialize with folks. I'm from the Midwest, so I'm always yakking it up with someone from the Midwest. No one's ever parking. They're always using rideshare because they're enjoying Old Town Scottsdale. They also, unique capacity, I'm a psychologist, and the mental health company I work for, the corporate office is across the street. In the past, they've actually stayed at the Scott for their corporate retreats. Last night, I drove to North Scottsdale to a competitor for our retreat dinner last night. I was able to share with them the project that's moving forward and the possibility that they could move back to staying at the Scott for retreat in the future. Instead, right now, they're planning on waymoing down to Canal Convergence tomorrow night, as opposed to being able to walk, which we're able to do when we're as close to that. So I would, again, recommend the approval of the reduction of parking in the overall project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this point, I don't know if there's an applicant wishes to speak to close out. I see Councilwoman Whitehead, so let's go to council comment.
Well, I just want to agree with all of the speakers. This hotel is a gem. It is what makes Scottsdale, Scottsdale. And the Grossman Company, what do? They run hotels. And if the parking is, they know their parking, the city council doesn't. And that's what I love about the city of Scottsdale is we give flexibility to our businesses because we want our businesses to thrive. It is beautiful, so my compliments to the architect. I love going there too. It is just a gem. So, and I just want to add one selfish note. A parking lot generates heat. A conference center generates tax dollars. So just yet another reason for my support. So I motion to approve Scott Resort parking reduction request 4DR 2024 and approve the applicant's request for a parking reduction that is greater than 10% of the total parking required for an existing resort on a 8-acre as allowed in zoning ordinance section 9.104.f.4.c with multifamily residential R5 zoning.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none. Go ahead. Councilman Littlefield.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question and a concern regarding this. I don't want to set a precedent. We have parking requirements for a reason. And if we just say, well, we have them, but you don't really have to obey them, then that opens the door to a lot of things I don't want to see up here on this council dais. So that is a concern. To me, it has to be really proven in hardcore that this is not going to negatively affect our parking ordinances, which are therefore a reason. The other question I have, which was not addressed in this, and that is if we agree to this and you go ahead and you build a convention center, would you be anticipating more cars to come to the convention center when you have programs and things that are going on there? And will you still have enough parking to cover what you anticipate when the convention center is active and busy?
Mayor and Councilwoman Littlefield, I certainly appreciate your concerns. What I would say is that currently this resort is 40% underparked according to your current ordinance. So it's your discretion allows for certain circumstances, and if this isn't approved, they can't grow their business on the conference side. They can't keep up with the marketplace. And really, I think that leads to your second question, which is a great question. Their market is to fill their hotel rooms with conference center guests. And so if this allows them, and I think the last gentleman who testified said that his psychology business just took their resort to a different location because they had inadequate conference center space. Those are hotel guests that they did not have occupy their hotel rooms, and that's what they're really looking for. They're a conference-based, tourist-based resort hotel, and that's why they're doing this. And even if this was business from the Scottsdale community, they would still be overparked by 200 and some parking spaces according to, because we're providing more than the 140 that we are required, or that we are required under our parking study.
So you currently are over what is required for the parking site of this hotel?
Councilwoman, we are actually 40% underparked according to your ordinance, but we're 89% overparked according to how many we actually need, according to our parking study. And if you'd like, I can have our parking consultant and our traffic engineer come up and talk to you more in detail about that.
Yes, I would. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Would you please put Jordan's presentation back up? My name is Paul Bash. I'm a consulting traffic engineer with Summit Land Management. Good to see you all again. Good to be in a familiar room again. Let's see, we need to move far along in this presentation. This is a graph that shows the parking occupancy count that we did. It was the 2 busiest days of calendar year 2023, 2 days in late March. We hired another firm to do the counting. We don't do the counting ourselves. You can see the red line at the top that shows 296 available parking spaces. You can see the blue line at the bottom that shows the number of occupied spaces. The worst parking demand left the parking lot 2/3 empty. That's simply a fact. And you heard testimony from some dozen people who verified that. You saw with Jordan's slides of Amber's drone photographs, day after day after day, hour after hour after hour, 2/3 of the parking spaces are empty. As Jordan said, specifically to your question, Councilman Littlefield, the parking that will be available when the conference room is constructed and enlarged is double what is needed. There's a contingency plan, there's a plan B. The resort will have double the parking spaces they physically actually need. I hope I answered your question, Councilman Littlefield.
Okay, I'll make a few comments. Thank you. First of all, the category of this property is legal non-conforming, okay? So Scottsdale adopted our own zoning ordinance in 1971. And this property, dates 60 years ago. Basically, Scottsdale was 13 years old at the time, back in 1964. The county did the regs and the zoning, even the building department, I believe, at that time, because the city didn't have the resources to do it in-house. So when the city adopted our zoning ordinance, this place was already built. It was already, several decade and a half old. And since then, of course, we've adopted other codes, including the current one, which is council adopted for new builds, for new buildings. But this is a legal non-conforming. That's also a legal term within our jargon as architects, and it's a legal term in the city. What I noticed about this, this has a full package to it. Okay, there's a lot of frontage improvements there. There had been a lot of oleander, kind of old school oleander, darkening that corner. That's all getting taken out, and it's getting cleaned up quite a bit. In fact, when people see the new building, it blends with the existing style. I think they'll say, well, maybe that was there all along, because it was hidden by that oleander turning the corner. I find that, and they've taken some suggestions about better lighting to bring pedestrian people in as they're walking into Old Town. So what we have here is a constant reinvestment of a location, and that's a good thing. Not only were the properties, sold and resold, but they were held, and in this case, a very highly reputable developer that I believe they've already renewed all the bedrooms or the rooms, and now this would go into the rest of their business plan. The other thing that this has is it has flexibility with, I think, 4 A, B, C, D sections. Right now, they have scattered meeting rooms in that place, so they can't combine them, which would be good for when you have breakouts. Finally, as far as parking, it's true that this property is very walkable, but when they do hold conferences, people don't just drive there in cars. When they have off-site, visits to the Desert Botanical Garden or something like that, they have buses that pick them up, and it's very well run, and that's how they get them there to see different attractions. I know we hosted a group of national hay growers here in Scottsdale, and they had a bus taking them out at 7 in the morning to some property that knew how to do it and all that kind of stuff. So it's a real compliment to our growing well, to having a location that's been pretty stable. With that, I support this project. I hope we see, we have a motion on the floor. I see Councilwoman Caputi wishes to speak, then Durham and Whitehead. Thank you.
Just a really quick comment. I'm perfectly comfortable that there will not be a precedent created here. I think the reason that this case is before us today is that our ordinance wisely included that for a reduction greater than 10%, it has to come before council for us to rule on it as a case-by-case basis. So, that, again, we can't create a precedent. I think in general, most of the hotels these days are being overparked. You used the example of the Canopy Hilton. I don't know if anyone's been visiting the Canopy Hilton any day of the week, anytime, but that parking garage underneath is empty always. So I have, again, I'm very comfortable with this. I think you guys have done a fantastic job presenting, and I can't imagine how it would ever create a precedent. Super comfortable to support. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Member Durham.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councilmember Caputi that this doesn't create a precedent. Our ordinances give us discretion to match the parking to what's required. So this is a case-by-case basis that doesn't set a precedent. And I'd just like to clarify, this is not a convention center. It's a conference center. And so the Democratic National Convention is not going to be held here. These are small conferences which are directed to filling the rooms in the hotel, not bringing in outside people, as I understand it, so that these are smaller conferences. It's not going to create a big overflow. It's mostly going to be people who are traveling by Uber and Lyft and so forth and so on. And so I'm completely in support of this project. Thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman Janik, and then we have a motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say I applaud the fact that we have a small business, which maybe isn't so small, but an individually owned business that wants to expand. And I think that's a good testament for the services you provide and how the community appreciates that. So thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve and a second. Please record your vote. The motion carries 6-1 with Vice Mayor Graham dissenting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good luck with your project. Next, we have item number 15. I'm just looking to the council. Do you need a break, or are we ready to go? Let's go.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brent Stockwell. I'm one of your assistant city managers. My role is to briefly provide context for this next item from the zoning ordinance and city code. For this item, the city council should be guided by the zoning ordinance, which states in the section on appeals of cultural council decisions that the city council at its meeting shall affirm, modify, or reverse the decision of the cultural council. In addition, Section 9 of the 2024 Rules of Council Procedure lays out a process that can be used for this instance, similar to those used for planning cases or development review board appeals. So you saw it earlier tonight. You get a staff presentation. You can ask questions of staff. In this case, there will be an appellant presentation up to 10 minutes, unless more or less time is granted by a majority vote of council. Mr. Brooks here will be making that presentation. Then any public comment, then council questions of staff and the appellant. Then the appellant response to the public comment, staff response if needed, then council motion and deliberation and council vote. The council, in reviewing the decision, should take into consideration the following requirements outlined in the zoning ordinance. Where it refers to the cultural council, that should be read as Scottsdale Arts. Scottsdale Arts acknowledges that it does not have an applicable adopted public art master plan, as the last 10-year plan was approved in 2012, so the City Council should take into consideration the other two items, the relationship of the artwork to existing artworks, and the consistency of the artwork to the zoning ordinance's cultural improvements program and the city's public art ordinance, And the city council cannot oppose artistic judgment on the artwork, as that is something that is prohibited of Scottsdale Arts in making their decision that has been appealed to you. On the screen now is the following definition for artwork as outlined in the city's public art ordinance. I wanted to provide that for reference, as it is referenced in the denial letter, and we wanted to make sure that you had exactly how that was defined by ordinance. So that's something that you may want to pull up in the future if there's a question about that. So as a reminder, there are 3 options for the City Council tonight: to affirm, to modify with stipulations, or to reverse the decision. And unless there are questions of me, rather than have me explain the Scottsdale Arts decision to the council, I would like to turn the podium over at this time to Gerd Wusterman and Katie Bayeris with Scottsdale Arts to explain Scottsdale Arts decision to the City Council.
Thank you, Brent, for the introduction. Mayor Ortega, Vice Mayor Graham, council members, thank you for hearing this presentation as part of the appeals process regarding additional public artwork at the Remy Hotel. By way of introduction, Gerd Wusterman, President and CEO of Scottsdale Arts. With me tonight is Katie Bayeris, our Director of Public Art. Point of clarification, Scottsdale Public Art is a division of Scottsdale Arts. It is governed, or it makes decisions on public art through its own Scottsdale Public Art Advisory Board. However, at the end of the process, those decisions are also ratified by Scottsdale's governing board of trustees. With that said, I'd like to turn over to the next slide and give you a few salient high-level points. First and foremost, the Scottsdale Arts is a named party in the development agreement the city entered years ago with the developer. However, Scottsdale Arts was never part of the decision-making process or the process of developing this development agreement, so we're a little bit out in the dark when it comes to that. Secondarily, when the developer came to us, after already having fulfilled its requirements for public art earlier this year with this concept of a 9-story tall video wall alongside the Remy Hotel, we felt fairly strongly that this was a decision outside of our jurisdiction because it really requires significant ordinance changes or exemptions, and we thought this would be something that is purview of council, not of ours. City staff then, however, instructed us to put this through the public art process, which we did, and which just brings us to this evening.
And I'll just add a little bit of clarification on this timeline. The Scottsdale Public Art Advisory Board was very familiar of the long timeline with the projects, and they reviewed carefully previous DRB and council decisions on these items in their deliberations. I want to point out the 4 items in gray are the Scottsdale Public Art interactions with the Maya Hotel, or Remy Hotel, formerly Maya Hotel, and their approvals. And then the white boxes are the city decisions related to the project. In August of 2021, they presented their first phase 1 concept, which actually included 4 possible artists. And at that point in time, there was no presentation of a digital video screen at that point in time. They returned in March of 2023, about 18 months later, with a new public art concept that was a sculpture by an artist named Daniel Popper. That artist was not included in the original 4, so that phase 1 approval in March of 2023 replaced the original public art approval in August of 2021 as a sculptural concept that would move forward in the process. They then returned in March of 2024, bringing forward the Daniel Popper into the phase 2 of this process, where we review the engineering requirements and installation requirements necessary to bring this to fruition. And this image here of the hotel actually shows the location of that screen, but there was no indication that a video screen would be a part of the public art concept in March of 2024. Simultaneously, the developer attempted to present the digital video screen to the city through the DRB process as if it was already approved as public art, but it had not been presented to the Public Art Advisory Board as a digital video screen at that point in time. and they were directed to come back to us later. In August, we received the actual presentation, including the video screen. In September, we presented it to our advisory board on the agenda. The developer presented it, and the advisory board determined that they wanted to have adequate time to review and consider the timeline of these decisions, and wanted to make their decision in October of 2024. And that brings us to where we are today.
So our Public Art Board was very diligent and took 2 months to deliberate over the course of 2 separate board meetings. The meetings allowed the developer to, of course, make its presentation and were open to the public. A number of members of the public actually attended both online and in person. And at the end of the process, the board both times went into what we call executive session, which is simply part of our jury deliberation process. If you have an artist presenting or pitching a piece to you, you want to have a way of having a confidential conversation around that particular item. Each time we came out of executive session, repeated what was discussed and deliberated and the outcomes for the record, which were captured in minutes, which were then made available to the public and to the developers via email and on our website.
So now I'll walk you through the 8 reasons why the advisory board determined that this was not something that they could approve. First, they felt that the screen does not fall under the jurisdiction of Scottsdale Public Art because the developer had already met their requirements with the Daniel Popper sculpture, and here's an example of a rendering of that piece that we expect to see installed very soon. Number 2, they felt that the content of the piece is infinitely changeable and thus beyond the ability of Scottsdale Public Art to oversee. They were very careful about asking what exactly is being presented here, and what is being presented is a large video screen that would host digital artwork via video, so it could be changed at any point in time. Our current ordinance is not written in such a way that it allows for ongoing oversight and approval of art that would change over time. It's written to approve permanent public art that would remain the same, and then the developer takes over all maintenance and operations of it. So essentially committing to a large digital screen with changeable artwork at any point in time would then be committing staff time and resources to constant oversight of this, which we are not equipped to do at this point in time. Number 3, this is a drastic change from the phase 1 concept presented in Daniel Popper. This has actually moved on into phase 2. This is the engineering structure. The advisory board is very comfortable with the Daniel Popper sculpture in fulfillment for the cultural improvements program for this developer, and they felt that at this late in the game, introducing something so different and new that is unrelated to the sculptural concept that has been approved is just beyond what they can approve for the approval of the certificate of occupancy for this developer. 4, they felt that this was not an adequate presentation of an art concept, but simply a presentation of a method for presenting undefined video content. They did present us with the name of an artist, but the only reference to what the content of the artwork would be is that it would be Scottsdale related. They also felt that this dynamic wall mural on a 90-foot by 18-foot digital screen is not fitting in relationships to surrounding artworks in the area. There are over 40 pieces of public art in the Old Town area. This picture is taken from Solari Bridge, where you can see the location of the screen directly in between 2 of Paolo Solari's earth cast panels. So this is just one direct example. You're probably familiar with these other pieces as well, the Arabian Horse Fountain, the doors, Love, and Windows to the West. The advisory board doesn't feel that a video art wall of this magnitude is in keeping with our current public art collection. They also felt that it was not in keeping with the surrounding neighborhood and character areas, including the Old Town waterfront and shopping area. This is to reiterate that they carefully did review previous decisions made by the city to make sure they were not violating prior approvals, and they determined the fact that a video screen had not been approved by the DRB or by council in previous presentations. Number 7, this is about the definition of public art. As presented, they felt that this does not meet our current definition of public art in our public art ordinance, and thus would require a special exception to that definition by council before they could consider approving it. And finally, they felt that the implementation of a screen of this magnitude should require additional presentation, public hearing on the topic that would be beyond the scope of what Scottsdale Public Art does with interactions with private developers, and then that should be under the jurisdiction of the city. So in summary, the Public Art Board does not approve this proposed change to the Phase 1 art concept. They do still remain that Daniel Popper is approved, and they can move forward and fulfill their cultural improvements program requirements with that sculpture. We look forward to seeing it installed later this year.
In closing, I'd like to request that if the council sees fit to overturn this decision, we need to recuse ourselves from oversight and control over this panel. It simply by far exceeds our ability in terms of staff and capacity, because a 9-story tall, 90-foot tall video wall that you can program with any content at any given moment is simply beyond us to exude any oversight over. So with that, we thank you for your attention, and we're happy to answer any questions or hear any comments.
Councilwoman Janik.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. I just want to understand what we are going to be voting on, and that is, if we vote in the affirmative, we are approving the denial.
The motion can be made to affirm. Then by voting yes, that would affirm. Okay, a motion could be made to deny,
Okay.
and then so if the motion is made to affirm the decision, then a yes vote would do so, affirming the denial.
Thank you.
Okay, city staff, did you have any comment for now? Okay, you know, I agree with the findings and the preparation, which was done by the Scottsdale Public Art Group. First of all, I want to commend you for curating the collection. We have over 160, I think 161 public art pieces that are enjoyable for the the public and in our walk-arounds. I believe that the points that you've made, such as the glaring presence on Scottsdale Road, as illustrated in one of the findings, would be is a point of matter of for denial. And with that, I would.
Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to make sure the council understands the applicant and
Oh,
appellate's
excuse me.
attorney is here to make a presentation. So I would encourage the council to listen to his presentation before making a final decision.
Of course. I apologize. Please come forward, applicant, and I believe there are no requests to speak from the public.
Can I have the Elmo activated? Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you for the opportunity to visit with you tonight. My name is David Brooks. I'm with my own firm, Brooks & Affiliates. My address is 4320 East Brown Road in Mesa, Arizona. I'm here representing Stockton Capital Partners, Equity Partners, and the Maya Hotel, LLC, who I will refer to as the builder. Now, We're here to talk about an appeal dealing with Scottsdale Art's decision to deny our request to approve the art wall. As staff told you, under the ordinance on this appeal, council has the option to affirm the decision, to modify the decision, or to reverse the decision. The builder's request here is that you do the middle one, that you modify the decision, send it back to Scottsdale Public Arts, tell Scottsdale Public Arts that they have jurisdiction to do what they've always been asked to do under the city ordinance, and that they implement the plan that was long ago approved by this council and the Development Review Board. This is the wall, the art wall that we're talking about. This is one of the slides that was presented to the Scottsdale Public Art. We presented at the time the artist, Ernest Roberts with Art Heavy, who was going to present various versions of the digital art wall. And that's what we're here to talk about. To give you a little history, the area where the Maya, and now it's called the Remy Hotel, is located is in an area that used to be called the Entertainment District. We call it the Scottsdale Collection, and the objective was to make the old Entertainment District a hospitality district that would be reinvigorated. And in working in corroboration with city staff, the builders' representatives, and city staff were told, if you can put art there, that will help draw pedestrians and others to reinvigorate the area. The objective at the time was to transform this kind of a setting that was the old entertainment district to this. An art-infused area that would draw pedestrian traffic, hotels, restaurants, all the kinds of things that you want to do to improve and develop a hospitality district. Now, unlike what you heard from the folks at Scottsdale Arts, the notion of digital art in Scottsdale is not new. In 2021, Canal Convergence put art on the exterior of the Scottsdale Center for the Performing Arts, digital art. Other buildings during that time received the same kinds of art, digital art, sponsored by Scottsdale Arts in the Canal Convergence, and even the canal itself had digital images going over the canal. The notion that we wanted a digital art wall, like I said, is not new. Now, when you go back to when this process started, the City Council directed staff, directed the staff and report to create a development plan for the Scottsdale Collection. In zoning case 9, ZN 2020, and the staff report 12/7/2020. It was reported that art will be a unifying theme for the Scottsdale Collection. The intent was that it would have unique art encounters and visual experiences for the residents and the visitors. In the approved development plan, it's important to understand the goals in the city were to create an interactive arts district and to create and animate public spaces. So, what did the builder do? They created a plan that would include lighting enhancements, building facades to create new and exciting visual and sensory experiences. In the council's package, public art was specifically discussed. And guess what this is? It's a digital art wall in Millennium Park, Chicago. That image was in the council's package, and specifically, it was decided to talk about murals that were dynamic, engaging interaction with light installations and aerial experience. That was approved by the council when the zoning plan was approved. The location was for the Maya Hotel, again, approved by the zoning plan, that there would be murals, wall developments, and projection art. That was all with the council. Now, the Scottsdale Collection, the Maya Hotel or the Remy Hotel is on Schumann Lane and Buckboard Trail. The art, or it's an interior piece of property, not on a main street, because the builder was told that if you put the art in, we'll help you, and that's how you will draw people there. Finally, in the development plan with the city council, there was a location for the art on the murals of the Maya Hotel. Next step associated with the city council development plan was to do a development agreement. It's a contract between the city and the builder. Few important things. The contract said that the art would, or there would be art that would be artistically inspired, lighting features and lighting enhancements. And they would be unique, artistic, and creative ways. Then it said that there would be light enhancements with interactive installations and destination art. Importantly, for purposes of our discussion, the development agreement provided that the art enhancements, the lighting enhancements, were defined and met the definition of art as provided in the Scottsdale Ordinance, as provided in Chapter 20, 20-121, which staff showed you. So the council's already decided what we do and we're doing for this development was art. It's in a contract. Now, next step was to go to the Development Review Board. Why do we have to go there as far as the art part? Because City Code Section 7-1010C2 says that the Development Review Board's only job with respect to the art is to determine the location. With the Development Review Board, they were told that the Maya Hotel will feature a large-scale mural art wall that will be visible for the pedestrians and throughout the Scottsdale collection. The Development Review Board saw the slides that showed the location. And importantly, in the slide that was presented to the DRB, it shows the art wall location. And that slide, when you blow up the little window, says it would have wall art that is projected and illuminated. It was approved. Now, the builder wanted to comply with the development agreement. We have a contract, right? So we go to Scottsdale Arts because that's what the contract says we're supposed to do. That's what we were instructed by staff to do. But the problem is, when we got to Scottsdale Art, they didn't really want to deal with it. They told us there was no jurisdiction. It was beyond their scope. And they gave a number of reasons that you saw. I can talk more, I don't have enough time. Let me just circle back to a couple of things, Mr. Mayor. Am I okay?
Yeah, continue, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what Scottsdale Art did, they gave us this list of reasons for denying our request. But the reasons, I'm going to focus on one here, which is this jurisdiction question. Two reasons Scottsdale Art's position is wrong. First, Code Section 7-1002 provides that the Cultural Council created by the City Council was given the authorization to run Scottsdale's art process. It was delegated. So that's the first reason, and it's also included in 7-1010, which says Scottsdale Art is supposed to approve all the public art. Second reason, and more importantly, the contract says all of the art developed in the context of the Scottsdale collection goes to Scottsdale Art. Doesn't say go back to the council, doesn't say go back to the DRB. It says go to Scottsdale Art, because Scottsdale Art is the group that the council assigned these kinds of responsibilities to. We did, and we provided examples, and they say it's just a method, an art method. They saw slides showing the art. They had the name of the artist. And it's not unlike a situation where you have a sculpture. The artist might do a preliminary drawing, right? It's not the sculpture that you're putting in front of the approving board. You give them the idea, and that's what we were doing here. Again, more art. Now, my time's run. I appreciate a little time, Mr. Mayor. I circle back to where we started. You should send this back to Scottsdale Art and modify their decision. Now, you heard Mr. Wersterman, and I hope I said that correctly. I apologize if I didn't. You heard him say, don't give it to us. Who else are you going to give it to? Are you going to keep it as a council? Are you going to take over the art process that Scottsdale Art is supposed to do? They need to deal with what they didn't want to deal with, so you should send it back with two principal thoughts. One, tell them they have the jurisdiction and authority to deal with this. And I'll mention one of the reasons with respect to that idea is that Section 120 or 7 I'll get it right. 7 or 20-121, when you talk about the definition of artwork, it's an original work of art by an artist, and in the list of things that can be art, it includes videos. We ask that you send it back, and you ask that the city or the Scottsdale Art implement the plan that has long been the plan for the Scottsdale collection. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for the presentation. And are there any questions? Councilwoman Caputi.
I just have a couple of questions. I was actually the chair of DRB when we heard this case, so I'm definitely remembering that dynamic art mural. So Dr. Westerman had pointed out that you've already fulfilled your art requirement, and yet you want to do more art, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing, but I'm just curious what your feelings were on that. Why does the builder care so much about having this particular additional art piece?
Thank you, Councilwoman Caputi. I'll go back to this slide that I showed you earlier. I mentioned that the Remy Hotel is on an interior block, Schumann Lane and Buckboard Trail. How are you going to get people to go to the hotel? When the zoning case was being worked on, city staff, the builder, they talked, and they said, okay, if you put this hotel on an interior block, which is not where a builder usually wants to put something like that, we will drive people there with art. And so if you notice on this screen, you have Scottsdale Road over here. And right on Schumann Lane, the southwest corner of the Remy Hotel or the Maya Hotel is where the art wall is supposed to be. So you have that as the centerpiece. It literally was this notion that if you want me to develop this hospitality district and you infuse it with art, the art wall is the centerpiece. That's why they want to do it. And there's another reason. They were encouraged by the city to do it. That's what happened.
I think from speaking to folks, what concerns them the most is, first of all, people have this fear that it's going to become some sort of a Las Vegas advertisement of, you know, come get a 2-for-1 special here or something like that, as opposed to an art wall. And the other thing, I think that's a concern from our arts department in particular, which is valid, is that if it were a forever changing mural, you know, how would we ever be able to control that? Would you consider a stipulation that you maybe give us 6 or 8 more specific examples, and then Scottsdale Arts could rule on those? I actually think it's kind of a cool idea to have art that's not completely static forever. And as you pointed out, I mean, anyone can go to Canal Convergence and see interesting different light art. So it's not a completely new idea. But again, I think that the fear is that we'll say yes, and then every other day it's a different thing, and there would be no controls over it. We would need to be able to wrap our arms around some sort of a stipulation that would say, here are the handful of designs, and Scottsdale Arts would approve. Is that something you would accept?
The short answer, Councilwoman Caputi, is if that were a stipulation that this council wanted to provide to Scottsdale Art, yes, but that's also what was contemplated. The information provided to Scottsdale Art showed the images, no advertising. We would even entertain a stipulation that says, if we put advertising, it stops it. Again, no advertising. No advertising. Now, when you talk about this notion it's changeable, of course, it's video, right? And the Scottsdale ordinance includes video as artwork. What do you think what's that supposed to mean? Was the Canal Convergence artwork potentially changeable? It was digital. But what Scottsdale Art can see is, as you said, 4, 5, 6 images that get approved. And perhaps those run for a period of time. And then after maybe a year or something, we go back and there's some new images. That's the blessing and the genius of the art wall. It can always be unique and engaging because it doesn't require this notion that the builder or the owner is every day going to be changing it. Did that answer your question?
Yes, City Attorney, would we be able to write a stipulation that would give us control over something like that? No advertising and you know, sort of like pre-approval of a set of designs?
Certainly, you could pre-approve potentially a set of designs. We don't have that here today.
Right.
I just want to clarify for the council that the options are under the ordinance, which is included in the development agreement, that's the process to be followed for approval of the art that is proposed, that the council, now that it's been appealed to the council, can affirm the decision, modify the decision, or reverse the decision, but it does not provide for remanding the decision back to Scottsdale Arts. So the point of the ordinance is to have a final decision with this appeal. So if the developer wanted to bring forth a second proposal, modify their proposal and bring that through, I think that the developer could do that, the builder, but I don't see how that could happen at this meeting tonight.
May I respond?
Please do.
No. Yes,
Please let
and
him.
then I have a comment.
Thank you. I respectfully disagree with the notion that what we're suggesting isn't a modification. Because the primary reason Scottsdale Arts said we're denying is because we don't think we have jurisdiction. We don't know what to do with this. You can modify the decision by telling them what they should already know. They do have jurisdiction. And you can ask them to implement the plan that was previously agreed to with the council. So when you look at the code section, you can modify with stipulations. That's what we're suggesting.
Okay, are you done with the floor, or do you have?
I would love to hear what the follow-up
Yes,
from
please
city
go ahead.
attorney. I'm good.
Thank you. I don't want to speak for Scottsdale Arts, but I listened to their presentation, Mayor and Council, and even though they were concerned about their jurisdiction, they went forward and reviewed this art. And there are many other reasons that they listed in their presentation about why they decided to turn down this proposal. I don't want to insert myself in the substantive decision that this council is going to make, but I do dispute the characterization that Scottsdale Arts stopped at their expression of concern over jurisdiction, or that was their primary concern. I also want to point out that there's a difference between the video that the developer wants to project and the screen, the large screen, which was not approved by DRB. So with that, I'll conclude my remarks, but I do think that's an unfair characterization.
Okay, I want to, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Okay. All projects in Scottsdale require a % for the art. That's just standard procedure.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
you aware of
require a
that?
what?
All projects in Scottsdale, especially Old Town, downtown, require a 1% contribution for the arts. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Okay. And we allow, or we defer the selection of public art to Scottsdale Public Art for their decision. And as a council, we step back from that decision because we do not get into the subjective question of it. So, knowing that a project such as the Maya had the legal requirement to provide public art or money for public art to be dispersed by the city manager or in the kitty for that. You chose, the company, the builder chose to use that allowance for a sculpture. And you chose to do that to satisfy the 1% of the art. You finished that obligation when you chose that piece of sculpture that satisfied the public art connoisseur group in that discussion. So my question is, did you or did you not satisfy that with the first sculpture that was approved?
The answer is we did satisfy that, but that doesn't end the discussion.
It does end the discussion as stated, because you were required by the development agreement, had you proposed a graphic of some sort before, which I did sit through one of the presentations when it was made, and it was called a billboard, a dynamic billboard. That was used during that term came up. Had you done that, proposed a dynamic projection of some sort, prior to your, this is a second choice. You have made a second choice, or you're suggesting a second choice. You may suggest a third choice and a fourth choice. I don't know. It's irrelevant to the satisfaction of the ordinance for 1% for art. So you used up your ability, in my opinion, and can't add on to that, obligating us or public art to then pursue another rabbit or another design, however it is described. So that's the question you have answered. You said you used it up, correct? You made the, you passed the, you provided the ordinance requirement for that first piece of sculpture. And I don't see any obligation to coerce or put another piece on our lap or delegate it as such.
May I respond further,
Yes,
Mr.
please.
Mayor? The obligation is in the development agreement itself. It defined all of the art, lighting fixtures, all of that was defined as fixtures that would go to Scottsdale art. So even if there's one piece, the popper piece, that goes to Scottsdale art, that doesn't mean that the other art that is developed by the developer, and remember, the objective was to make this whole section infused with art. So if we're going to comply with the agreement, we're going to do more art. And we don't have to limit ourselves to one piece. We don't have to limit ourselves to what the 1% is. If we do more to comply with the contract, we have to run it through Scottsdale Art, and that's all we did, and that's what we're doing here, Your Honor. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
The other question I have is the reference of context, which is illustrated in the points made. The only similar wall, and I don't know if it's as tall, is the digital display that we see on the 101 in front of the casinos, and which is so glaring, it's actually reflected on the walls of our neighborhood as you drive past Pima Road. So it is very obtrusive. I know that subject came up in the deliberations of the Scottsdale Public Art Group. I just happened to walk up there and I saw part of that discussion, and that's a very valid concern in terms of glaring light versus and reflecting lights through that whole area. That's a beacon of that's counter what Scottsdale has ever approved, and a dynamic billboard is also something that is not used in our city. So for those, on those grounds, and I see there's a couple other comments here, but I would move to affirm the decision of Scottsdale Art, which does not approve of the proposed changes.
Second.
Second.
Now, we have a Councilmember Durham and Vice Mayor Graham who wish to speak. And you could stay up there, that's good, that's okay, if they ask to address that.
Thank you, Mayor.
I just speak to you.
I'm going to join in the I will agree to the motion to affirm, but I agree with Attorney Scott that there were many other reasons beside jurisdiction here. And frankly, as I understand that, you're basically asking Scottsdale Arts to sign on to a blank check to approve in advance whatever you might throw up there. And it seems to me that's the major objection, is that they don't want to lose the ability to approve of that or spend the resources which would be necessary if you were to change that. So although I'm going to vote to affirm, I'm just curious whether you'd be willing to have some kind of advance approval process of a limited rotation, and whether Scottsdale Arts would agree to approval of a limited rotation of projects to be put up there. And that would be to be decided at a later time, because as I say, I'm going to vote to affirm the decision today. But I'd like to hear from Dr. Weissman whether that's something that they'd be.
Would you like me to answer your question from our
Yeah, sure. I'd like to hear your side, and I'd like to hear Dr. Weissman also.
So yes, we believe Scottsdale Art can look at a handful of images that will be on the dynamic art wall and approve them. They don't have maintenance obligations, and it's not going to be a billboard. And I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, if that was the term used. It's not my term, and it's not intended to be art. Or excuse me, I said that wrong. It is intended to be art. It's not intended to be advertising. So yes, I think we could do that, and that would be something we would work with Scottsdale Art. And as I mentioned, I believe that's their job.
Yes, Gerd, I'd like to hear from you on that.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. A couple of remarks. I want to say I appreciate City Attorney's comment about jurisdiction. We want to point out that there are multiple layers of jurisdiction involved in something as such, because it would really question some of the existing ordinances about large-sized digital displays in the city of Scottsdale. That's number one. However, we did exactly what we were supposed to do. That is, we put it through the juried process of the Scottsdale Public Art Board. The board reached this decision not because of one single issue, but because of 8 specific issues. As part of the deliberations, Mr. Brooks showed an image of Crown Fountain at Millennium Park in Chicago. We discussed that very image because many of us really love that piece. But that's not what this is. Crown Fountain is a singular piece by a singular artist that uses digital display of a face that moves as one static display year-round. It is a piece of sculpture that happens to use LED digital imagery as a component. That image never changes. It doesn't get replaced by anything else. It is one giant piece of art installation. It's a very different case. Similarly, I think we all know and understand and know how to differentiate between a celebration of light artwork at Canal Convergence for 10 days, where we showcase very specific pieces, one piece at a time, with one piece of content that is projected against walls for that 10-day duration. There is never any ambiguity about those pieces can be changed or altered and amended. So the question of controlling content is certainly one of the questions that we had to evaluate in this process, but it's only one of 8 parameters. There were many other parameters, including sensitivity to the neighborhood, sensitivity to the needs and wants of Scottsdale, existing artwork in close proximity to this particular piece, and so forth. The last comment I'd like to make, because I think Mr. Brooks has introduced that a number of times. Over the course of multiple years, we have seen the presentation of this concept evolve. There was talk of a mural. A mural is something very different than a 9-story tall video wall. Then it became a mural with lighting effects. That's still something very different from a 9-story video wall. And eventually, I believe it was for the first time introduced us in March or April of this year, this manifestation of a 9-story tall video wall appeared in front of us. Those are some of the reasons why we stand by our decision, and I hope the council will see fit so as well.
Hey, Vice Mayor, oh, sorry. Are you done, Durham?
Well, I would just add, I was going to say that this is totally different from Canal Convergence, which is George pointed out, is a 10-day period, and this is a permanent on the side of a building. So the analogy to canal convergence doesn't convince me at all.
Vice Mayor Graham, you can sit down, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe, I don't know if this question is for Sherry or for Gerd, but if we affirm this denial, the pauper statue still goes in, right? I think that was explained, but I just want to make sure that's crystal clear. Right, Mayor?
Mayor and Vice Mayor, I'll let Gerd answer that question, but my understanding is that that has already been approved.
It has already been approved, and so we would affirm the denial. It's almost like it's like a part of the public art application. No, just hear me out. The pauper is one part, and then the billboard is the other part.
Yeah. The developer came to us to approve different types of artwork in separate phases as part of this project.
Yes.
Phase 1 of the Daniel Popper sculpture, there's actually a second sculpture under review as well, I believe. But phase 1 of the Popper sculpture has been approved. None of that would change. This appeals process is simply limited to the presentation the developer made to us in regards to this video wall. So none of that would change if you affirm our decision today.
Did we show the pauper statue on the?
We did. It was a beautiful wooden mixed media sculpture with a sort of a face mask taken off of a large figurine.
I've got it here. I mean, it's you know, it's avant-garde and all that. I'm sure people like it. I was listening to the mayor, his comments, and I found myself in agreement with them. And a dynamic, display is going to create for you an indefinite performance obligation. It's just that simple. So I like the idea of pushing the envelope for public art. I like the idea of creative new ways and, dynamism and lights. But I trust your judgment on this. So I tried to second the motion, but Councilmember Janik was too fast. Thank you.
Vice Mayor, thank you for the vote of confidence. And also, we agree we like to push the envelope, but some things just don't meet the mustard.
Correct.
Councilwoman Caputi.
I'm just disappointed by the idea that if someone's fulfilled their 1% art, we say, we don't want any more art. You've done what we've requested as the bare minimum. Please don't give us any more art. We're done. I mean, that to me I'm having a really hard time with. I think of Scottsdale and especially our downtown area as was suggested, being a place where we encourage as much art as possible. I think the point of making a 1% is to establish a bare minimum. Yeah. That doesn't mean that we cap someone off at 1% and say, we can't possibly have any more art at all. I'm also kind of cringing at the thought of course I'm all about context. I've served on DRB myself for many years, and it's all about whether things are contextual with the area. But that's also not to say that because we've never done it before, we should never do it, right? One of the things that comes up on DRB a lot is colors, for instance, and people brought us slightly different colors over the years. We no longer do just the desert sand. It's starting to evolve a little bit into different hues of whites and grays, and it's cool. And suddenly then that becomes the difference, and things get, this is how things change. If we always say we've never seen it before, we're not going to be willing to do it, then nothing ever changes, right? So that piece of it is a little bit disappointing to me. I totally understand that I do not have support from my council, but I would have made a motion to modify with the suggestion that we stipulate, absolutely no advertising, and that we put a limit on the number of images, and that we allow you to approve a set number of finite images. To me, that takes away the fear that it would be this never-ending changing set of images, and of course then we could make sure that it wouldn't be advertising. But again, I don't know, I'm just kind of excited about the thought that you would have a piece of art and then you would not be married to it for the rest of eternity as long as that building is up, right? You would have a little bit of dynamic change, and I'm sorry, I thought it was kind of cool, so I'm a little disappointed, but I respect the will of the rest of the council.
Councilwoman Caputi, I so appreciate the comment. And I want to be clear, we had a lot of similar conversations among staff and Public Art Board, because this isn't a one-size-fits-all, right? And this isn't a sort of a clear-cut thing. Cities change and evolve over time. But I think it is very much contextual. It's when is the right time to take the next steps and how to preserve some level of synchronicity in a certain area. As I mentioned, we love pushing the envelope, but we also have to make clear a judgment in terms of when we reach sort of a saturation point about something. And we felt this was, again, the changeable content was only one of 8 points why we felt this really could not go forward in our mind.
Okay, I will call on City Attorney, and then we'll.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to clarify that the development agreement does contemplate that any proposed art would have to be approved through this process. So I'd encourage the council not to get, too focused on the 1%. The question is the art that this appellant developer proposing that was denied by the Scottsdale Arts, the Cultural Council, as set forth in the ordinance. Is the council comfortable with the denial of what's been proposed? Do you want to modify that in some way? That's the question that this council is deciding tonight.
Thank you, and I think we've all given our views. I'm getting back to Councilwoman Littlefield. Did you have any comment? Just, I believe everyone has. If not, everyone has expressed their views, and we have a motion and a second. Please record your vote.
Could you repeat the motion, please?
Okay, the motion is to agree with the findings of the Scottsdale Public Arts Committee and their denial of the proposed 9-story animated art piece.
Thank you.
Thank you. So please record your vote. Okay, the motion carried 6-1 with Councilman Caputi voting no. With that, thank you very much. We will now return to our regular scheduled program, which is a public comment, second opportunity for members of the public to come forward. Seeing none, I close public comment. Moving on to item number 16. Per our City Council charter, any citizen can bring forth petitions. We are in receipt of a petition with numerous signatures as prepared and by Mr. Sutton. And at this point, we will look at our options. We are each in receipt of the petition, and we are not permitted to discuss the merits of the petition, or there's no need for a presentation. The question are, number one, would we direct the city manager to agendize a petition for further discussion? Number two, direct the city manager to investigate the matter and prepare a written response to the council. And number three, and with a copy to the petitioner, or number three, take no action. Do I have a motion?
Yes. Mayor, I would move to follow number 2, direct the city manager to investigate and prepare a written response to.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. No further discussion. Please record your vote. Motion carries unanimously. With that, we have concluded our business for a regular meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, I'm sorry. There's one more item. That's my item, isn't it? Item number 18, and that pertains to, I added it to the list, and 17. Because I tossed number 18, show it to me. We took 18 out of order, 17 out of order, excuse me. Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay, I had a motion to agendize. Can you put that motion up to my motion for number 18?
Mayor, I can read it if you'd like.
Yeah.
We have the options on the screen, but I can read your request.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please read my request.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. It was to direct the city manager and city treasurer to agendize an item for discussion and possible council action to include in the upcoming proposed budgets a total of $1.2 million split between the next two fiscal years, with $600,000 in fiscal year 25-26 and $600,000 in fiscal year 26-27 to renovate the existing original museum, not including the expansion, which should be allocated between the Scottsdale Museum of the West Incorporated and the city, consistent with the respective maintenance responsibilities outlined in the approved museum management agreement.
I'll second that.
And I will just speak very briefly. I am not allowed to go further, but just to mention that the construction of the annex is underway, which is a tremendous asset for our Museum of the West. And this question would bring a 10-year-old facility up, especially for lighting, to match the new result. We have a motion. We have a second. Councilwoman Janik.
I just was going to say I'm in support of agendizing this item for future meeting.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Please record your vote. Thank you. We are unanimous. I knew I had something else. Okay, at this at this point, we have concluded all of our agenda items. Therefore, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A motion and a second. Please record your vote. We are adjourned, unanimous.